I want to welcome you to this episode of the Retro Rogues Live. My name is Dave Beatty. I'm one of your hosts. For nearly the last 30 years, I've been a professional illustrator and graphic designer. Worked on some fun stuff some people have heard of, things like Batman, Justice League, X-Men. Anyhow, in various capacities, mostly as an artist. I've also self-published a lot of things I'm very proud of, such as my creator-owned series, Bushy Tales, and also my current labor of love, Red Skirts, which you can actually read online on the fun interwebs. I want to welcome back my fellow co-host, or my co-host. This is Mr. Eric Alexander. Eric, please tell the folks either watching or listening at home some of the fun things you've worked on as a creative professional.
Hello, everybody. Yes, I am Eric Alexander, otherwise known as Base God 14, Base God 14. I am the Chief Financial Officer of Bad Bob Productions, which is a small film production company in Arizona. And I am also the associate producer for the feature film Occupants, featuring Star Trek Voyager actor Robert Picardo, and currently streaming on Tubi.
Very cool. So, as usual, we start the show off here with our pop culture news segment. Whatever fun things are happening in the world of pop culture news. Boy, do we have some interesting stuff to talk about tonight. Please, Eric, why don't you lead us off with something, and then I'll lead off with something, and then maybe you'll lead off with something, and then I'll probably take us down a dark path with something I found on the internet.
A dark path, you say? All right, let me pull up the article that I wanted to. Okay. So this is something that has been heavily talked about by the people on the fandom menace. And I actually got a different, not necessarily a different perspective. Well, he's not fandom menace. So I got a perspective here from someone who is not fandom menace, but is talking about this particular issue. So this is from BuzzFeed News. Let's see. This article is dated January 7th, written by Ryan Roderick. This is the title. The Star Wars misinformation hell is the new future of everything. It says, get ready for a world run by warring online communities completely lost in their own misinformation. Warning, this post contains spoilers for Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. Yes, we are going to probably talk about some spoilers for Rise of Skywalker in this particular article. I'm not going to go through the entire article, but I am going to go through this first part just so we know we're on the same page here. And I'm not sure if you're even aware of this particular story, Dave, so I'm going to get your reaction, I guess, of whether you've heard anything about this or not. So last week, a post on the Saltier Than Crate subreddit, a forum that started as a place for Star Wars fans to pick apart 2017's The Last Jedi, caused an eruption. Written by a user named Ego Shop, or Ego Shoppy, however you pronounce that, the message claimed director J.J. Abrams' original cut of The Rise of Skywalker was 40 minutes longer than the film's 2-hour, 22-minute theatrical runtime, and contained a large chunk of material that would have made some fans happier, including a scene featuring actors Hayden Christensen and Samuel L. Jackson reprising their roles to help fellow Jedi Rey defeat the resurrected Emperor Palpatine. Why would Disney, the media conglomerate that brought the science fiction franchise from its creator George Lucas in 2012, cut huge chunks out of Abrams' final cut? According to Ego Shoppy, the reasons were twofold: to make the film more palatable to the Chinese government and to damage the professional reputation of Abrams, whom Warner Brothers was courting to work on films set in the DC Comics cinematic universe, which includes characters like Batman and Superman. Marvel's biggest threat is a well-operational DC. They want to keep DC in the limbo that they're in right now, the post reads. Abrams jump-starting that franchise with something like a successful, audience-pleasing Superman movie makes them nervous. Their goal is to make JJ look bad to potential investors and shareholders. The post inflamed long-running Star Wars fandom paranoia that Disney had been using social media to manipulate fans. In it, Ego Shop, or Ego Shoppy, however you pronounce it, warns that all previous leaks about The Rise of Skywalker were shared by users tied to Disney directly. Fans have accused Disney of molding social media for years. It was impossible for Redditors to ascertain whether Ego Shoppy was telling the truth, trolling for fun, or lying to help Abrams, whose film was faced with critical and fan backlash. Regardless, Release the JJ Cut trended on Twitter as fans pieced together links and quotes from the cast, screenwriters, and directors that seemed to prove a different cut of The Rise of Skywalker existed. So, Dave, have you heard about this story?
I have heard that there's additional material involving Palpatine that was left out of the film, and I've heard that on different places. I have no idea if it's legit or not. I'm pretty sure there is stuff on the cutting room floor because there's always stuff on the cutting room floor.
Of course.
The long and the short of it is, I don't think a 3-hour rise of Skywalker would have helped the film, Disney, Star Wars, J.J. Abrams, anybody. I don't know if 40 more minutes of that film would have made that much of a difference. And to be honest, I mean, if there is that much material, which I can't imagine there is, but if there is that much material sitting around, the reason that it's sitting around the cutting room floor is because, a 3-hour movie just, I don't think it would have done very well at the box office. A lot of people wouldn't have gone to see it. I think it would have been too long. It was already too long, in my opinion, as it was. So
that's a good point. That's a good point.
And as far as the, Star Wars misinformation, misinformation has been existing about stuff forever. Just wait until we get into the news article I want to talk about today. I want to talk about misinformation. So it's everywhere. I guess the thing is, internet's, and this is going to be maybe kind of a dig on us a little bit too, but the internet has given everyone a right to an opinion. And you have to choose who you're going to listen to, who you're going to trust. If it's someone you don't know, someone you're not familiar with, and someone who you don't particularly enjoy following or whatever, or someone who leads you down the wrong path or is constantly courting misinformation every time you turn around, which we'll get into that thing later because that's supposed to be a reputable source, you just have to stop listening to them. You have to choose. There's a lot of stuff I don't pay any attention to on the internet. I see all the time. I recently shut down a lot of my social media just because I was just sick of just seeing this nonstop litany of just nonsense from all over the globe about everything, not just Star Wars. I mean, everything. So you're going to have to decide as a viewer, as a listener, as a hopefully a conscious, mindful entity on the face of the planet Earth walking around. You're going to have to choose who you want to listen to and who you want to trust, because misinformation is not going away anytime soon. I think the genie's already out of the bottle. So that's kind of my opinion on this. But I think this misinformation hell, it already exists. It's been around for a long time. Look at the Snyder Cut stuff. I mean, it's just this nonstop thing. And I don't believe J.J. Abrams is going to save Superman or DC. Give me a break.
Yeah, I don't believe that for a second either. That's one of the main things that I see in the post where I'm like, okay, this does not sound like somebody who actually is a true insider. You know what I mean? Right. Because the idea that JJ is going to save DC, which quite frankly, I don't think DC really needs any saving. What we're going to see is Wonder Woman 84 is going to be critical to the health of DC. But we have to remember Aquaman was a huge hit. So yeah. DC right now, just on the path they're on, they're fine. The question is things like Suicide Squad, the new Batman, how are they going to play out? And again, I think Wonder Woman 84 is critical to the future of DC. But in terms of this article and what it's talking about, there are kind of two different aspects to it. On one side, it's just sort of the face value of this particular story, of this Reddit post, and whether this person is credible or not. Are they giving us factual information or not? Is any of this actually true? I think a lot of it is probably maybe half-truths. It's hard to know whether this is somebody that is truly some kind of insider or not. What's interesting about that is I recently saw a video by that Junkman. Are you familiar with Junkman at all?
A little bit. I haven't seen a lot of his stuff, but a little bit.
So Junkman's interesting because Junkman is I think it's fair to say he's pretty much like a Star Wars super fan. He doesn't like to get overly critical. I've engaged with him a lot on Twitter with my perspectives, and I always try to be respectful with him. And we actually have a pretty good back and forth where we're very respectful going back and forth because he gets sick of a lot of the criticism because he's just like, I'm a fan. I like the movies. I like Star Wars. He's a big collector. That's what his channel's, a lot of his channel's about, is collecting. And he just kind of has more of a, I would say more of kind of like a surface perspective on Star Wars. He just kind of likes it. You know what I mean? And he doesn't feel like he has to justify it or explain it a whole lot. And I get that. I don't have a problem with that. Like I said, I have very good interactions with him online. But he did a video that does kind of point to this, to the other side of this article, which is this whole idea that this is the new future of everything. Well, what he did was he did a video about the leaks that were happening for Empire Strikes Back. And these were issues of Starlog magazine. You remember Starlog magazine?
I love Starlog magazine.
So he was quoting from Starlog magazine. And he started with an interview from David Prowse, and he went into some letters that were coming in from fans. And then they even had a quote unquote insider, unquoted insider, telling them plot leaks from Star Wars. And it was very interesting to hear what they were saying, because some of it was true and some of it wasn't. There was a lot of buzz about Boba Fett. There was a big story that Boba Fett was going to kill Han Solo. I don't know if you remember that at the time or not, but I was very young when Empire came out. But apparently there was this whole thing that Boba Fett was going to kill Han Solo because Harrison Ford didn't want to be in the movies anymore, which, by the way, we know that's true, but that's not what happened, right? We know that Harrison Ford wanted Han Solo to actually die in Return of the Jedi, but there was this big rumor that because Harrison Ford didn't want to continue, he was going to die in Empire Strikes Back, and he's going to be killed by Boba Fett. But there were all sorts of other rumors. Now, what it turns out is, what the publicity guy for Lucasfilm at the time, he was responsible for most of these leaks. And what he was doing was he was deliberately mixing somewhat factual stuff with a bunch of BS to throw people off. So it was actually something specifically crafted by someone at Lucasfilm to basically put out disinformation mixed with real stuff to keep people guessing.
Was he also a secret KGB agent? Because that sounds like someone in the KGB to me.
Yeah, that's I used to say this in the political circles I ran in. That's a good a good psychological operation. You have to mix truth in with the fallacies, with the bad information, because that's the only way you have a good lie. You have to mix truth, and then what happens is people don't know what source to trust anymore. That's how you run a good psych operation. So you make sure that people now, they don't know who to trust anymore because they're hearing some stuff that's right, some of it's wrong. They don't know who to believe, blah, blah, blah. So my point is, with the future of everything, this is nothing new. Studios have been doing this for a long time. And I'll probably, when I re-edit this and stuff like that, I'll put in Junkman's video so people can take a look at that and see how crazy those rumors were and how it all turned out to be coming from the publicity department of Lucasfilm, or at least a lot of them were. So I wonder with this, if that could be something that's going on. There is sort of a conspiracy theory out there that this is misinformation from Disney to give J.J. Abrams sympathy, because they are going to release a quote-unquote director's cut of The Force Awakens when it comes out on Blu-ray. So not The Force Awakens, I'm sorry. I get them confused. I don't like the Disney trilogy. What are we on now? The Rise of Skywalker. The Rise of Skywalker. So so there's a rumor that they're going to come out with a director's cut, and this is deliberate disinformation to give JJ some credibility and sympathy that, oh, Disney screwed him and now we got to make this right and blah, blah, blah. Personally, as you talked about before, we know that films go through lots of reshoots. Rogue's One, pretty much there is like another movie of Rogue One. I mean, they went through huge reshoots. I was really disappointed because I'm a huge Rogue One fan, and I got like one of the best like Blu-ray editions, special editions. There's no deleted scenes on it. And it really disappointed me because we know that movie was almost completely redone. There were huge sections of that movie that were redone. And I'm just curious about it as a fan, not to rag on it, not to do anything else, because I like deleted scenes and I thought it would be cool to see what the original vision was and how it changed. Right. Because I liked the way it went, but I still like seeing how the other path was. We also know that the original Star Wars was supposedly saved in the editing room. Supposedly there were all sorts of issues with the original Star Wars, and a lot of people say that it was literally saved in the editing room. So there are countless different versions of that possibly. So again, this is kind of like, I take it as I said, this is kind of this could possibly be sort of a psych op, for a lack of a better term, deliberate misinformation. or it could just be some guy who sounds credible enough just to get some buzz going and wanted people to look at his Reddit. Who knows, right?
Yeah, I think could have been that too. But no, yeah, the misinformation thing's been going on since forever. And it's all over the place. It's in everything. Politics, you name it. It's everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But I do think that this is interesting, that in terms of a lot of people have been talking about it. I do think that there absolutely is at least one or two additional cuts of this movie that do exist. There's just no denying that. Any big movie, there's going to be alternate cuts, and I'd be interested to see them personally.
Right.
I should say the caveat. I would be interested to see them if I actually was interested in this movie anymore, which I'm not. But for those of you that are, I would think, oh, that's fine. I would like to see another cut. That'd be cool. Funny with like this obviously relates to kind of the Snyder cut because it's the same kind of buzz and the same kind of story in a lot of ways. I'm fine with Justice League the way it is. I own that, and I don't own like a ton of movies. So I own the Justice League because I really enjoyed that movie. I really liked it, and I guess I'm in the minority of DC fans that did. But I'm fine with releasing the Snyder cut. I didn't like what he did on Batman versus Superman. I don't like that movie. I could pretty much say I hate that movie. But you know what? I'm not a Snyder hater. I own Watchmen. I like that. I have 300. I love that. I own that. You know what I mean? So I feel like, I'm just more of an independent thinker, and sometimes I'm going to like what you do. Sometimes I'm not. And I have specific reasons why I do or I don't. But I'm fine. Release all the cuts. Release all the deleted footage. You know what I mean? Go ahead. Because I think that's more fun, and I enjoy that stuff.
Okay. Yeah. I don't have anything else to add to that. Are we good to move on to the next topic?
Well, we're still in
yeah, we're still doing
news,
pop
right?
culture news. I have something I want to talk about. Could you share my screen, please?
Absolutely.
So I'm going to let this trailer play in the background. Did you see the trailer for New Mutants?
I did not.
So apparently the film is going to legit get released. This trailer actually looks pretty good. I'm digging it. It is a superhero sort of horror movie, or an X-Men horror movie with the New Mutants characters, and I really dig it. I think this looks interesting. You can tell who all the characters are when they start on using their powers, which I thought was really neat. And I was kind of surprised because this is Rand. She's a werewolf. We can see her starting to turn. This is Sam Guthrie, who's Cannonball. And then that's really clicked off of them really quick. Anyhow, this trailer actually looks pretty good. And I love Ilania Rasputin, who is actually Colossus's. I said her last name wrong. But that's Ilania. That's actually Colossus's sister, the blonde-haired character. She's known as Magic. And I've always really liked that character because I'm a big Colossus fan. And it's pretty cool because as the trailer progresses, they all have their powers. And they actually show her manifesting her like demon armor and the soul blade, or whatever it's called, the sword that she wields. And she actually teleports. And I was kind of surprised at that. Now, this film is taking inspiration, or is slightly inspired by, I think it's called the Demon Bear storyline from the New Mutants run, which is a very popular story for New Mutants. But it actually looks pretty good. I was kind of surprised. There was a lot of talking about misinformation and rumor. There was a lot of talk that this film was not going to get released at all. And they have decided to release it, and it looks like it might be pretty fun.
Yeah, this is my first time actually seeing this.
She just transported, and look, she's got her sword. I was like, hell yeah. So I am pretty excited about New Mutants. Pretty excited.
This is the first I've even heard about it. I didn't even know that there was a New Mutants movie coming out. So
yeah.
So I appreciate you bringing that to my attention. And now I'm going to have to take a look at this again, because that was literally the first time I've seen the trailer, was just right now without the sound. I also just want to acknowledge the chat. We have EA Cardist And they said, I love JL. You have a solid argument for not liking Batman versus Superman. I recognize that even when I did like it. That's always nice, isn't it? When somebody can acknowledge that we can disagree, but we have good reasons to disagree, right?
No, yeah. And EA Cardist, I hope I'm saying that right. I'm sure it's a nom de plume? What do they call that? An identity that you assume on the internet. Anyhow, no, there's a lot of things I love actually about Batman v Superman. And there's a lot of things I really, really like about Man of Steel. And there's a lot of things I like about Justice League. I think I'd probably like Man of Steel about the best, even though I totally hate that scene with Kevin Costner on the mountaintop, because Superman would not be suffering from lack of oxygen and see a vision of his father. I don't understand how it would work. But beyond that, I like Man of Steel quite a lot. And I consider myself a Scott Snyder fan. It is Scott Snyder, right? For some reason, I'm thinking that's wrong.
Isn't it Zack Snyder?
Zack Snyder. Okay. For some reason, I in my head I was confused. Scott Snyder, the writer, with Zack Snyder, the filmmaker.
That makes sense. I mean, names are similar. So,
anyhow, so let me walk that back. I am a big fan of Zack Snyder's films. Watchmen is actually one of my favorite of the superhero films that they've done. I really like Watchmen. A lot of people took issue with the changing of the ending and how some people felt like it was too faithful. I love 300. I think 300 is one of the best comic adaptations that has actually been made. I would put that on a similar shelf with Rocketeer and Crow. I mean, I think 300 is really great. And then that's a film that also changes something, but it actually adds to the texture of the story. It makes the story even more powerful. No, I mean, I like Justice League. I don't love Justice League. But I quite like Batman v Superman. There's a lot of things I really like about it. But no, it is good that we can comment and like and dislike things and have a fun spirited conversation, but still be friends at the end of the day. There's no reason that we have to be hating on each other just because everyone doesn't share your vision. I don't think that's the point. I think the point of fandom should be all of us coming together, discuss what we like and maybe at times dislike. Because maybe in seeing someone's dislike or someone's like, you might find a new appreciation for something that you didn't have before. That's the whole point of debate and discussion anyway, is to see the other side and maybe understand where they're coming from in order to find a common ground instead of just like dying on a hill.
That's very well said. Very well said. And EA Cardis and I actually did go way back. He identified himself in the chat. EA Cardis actually did some comic book art for me back in the day for a series I was doing. I was a teaser for a character I created called Mr. Hero Man. It's actually based on my dad. So I'm glad to see that he came in there and chatted. And it's funny because when the movie first came out, we had some very spirited debates about Batman versus Superman. Some very spirited debates about it. So glad to see that you came on the show, my friend Efren. Thank you very much for contributing. That's very, very, very nice of you.
Well, and I, before I pulled the YouTube channel down in a fit of angry rage, one of our most, between Jan and I, the Inicio Retrospective show, we actually reviewed Batman v Superman. And I held off on releasing it because it was we were so polar opposite, and Jan hated that movie. I mean, he hated that movie, and so I kind of sat on it for a little while. When I realized there were all kinds of people out there that just hated that movie anyway, I was like, well, hell, let's go and put it out there. So there you go. We'll be talking about hate here in just a little bit. Stay tuned.
Well, since you were talking about a trailer, I did mention to you off the air that I had a little bit of a request. For us to take a look at a trailer here. So let me get it queued up here. This is another, there have been just a huge slew of Star Trek Picard teasers. Have you noticed that? They're coming out fast and furious right now.
Well, yeah, they're trying to make sure people know, and they're hoping people want to watch.
And I think people do want to watch, but they are promoting it very heavily. To the point that I don't even know what teaser we're on, because I was actually in our comments, I was keeping track. Like the last time it was teaser number 4, and I sometimes use teaser and trailer, interchangeably, because I know the public does. A lot of people don't. I think in the public, a lot of people don't even understand the difference between a teaser and a trailer. Strictly speaking, this is a teaser, not a trailer. But I believe this is the new international one they have, because it has some Spanish comments and things like that. So I believe that this is possibly the South American teaser for Picard. There's not a whole lot of new footage in it, but I thought we'd go through it, and I'll show you the scene that particularly my friend wanted us to talk about and comment on and get your perspective on. So let's see here. So I think we have seen this image before of him breaking out the old communicator, which is cool. It's nice to see him breaking out the old Starfleet communicator. This goes by really quick. It's a teaser, so we've got the scene, which I love. I think we can't talk about it enough. Your theory about this scene of the incomplete painting and Data basically showing the incomplete painting to Picard, and possibly this having huge repercussions in the show, of this being basically Data's work with his child, and possibly we are going to see Data's child being protected by Picard. I love that theory, and I love the fact if that's true, and this uncompleted painting is sort of that analogy for this journey that Picard's going to take. That's going to be awesome. I think that's some good solid writing right there. I love that theory. It's not my own; it's yours, Dave, but I love it, and I think it's a really cool idea. That's the character where I call the mysterious stranger, because I always forget her name. The person that we think may be Data's daughter. Now, my friend who asked me to talk about this trailer, she believes this is Seven of Nine's daughter. Okay, that's that's her theory. She believes this is Seven of Nine and Chakotay's daughter specifically.
Right, which we've heard that before.
I think we have seen this maybe from a different angle. The experimentation that's obviously going on with the Borg. Most likely with the Romulans. We've seen this image before. These ships, we've talked about these ships a lot, which we think are the ships. There's a later scene that we're going to see them more in that triangle configuration. I think they're the same. I think they're Romulan. That's my best guess at this point. There's the other angle. I think those are the same ships. It's hard to tell, though, right? Those could be different ships, right?
Yeah. Well, no, I think it's the same triangular ships. I'm still just on the fence if they're Romulan or not.
Well, there was another, I don't know if it's in this trailer, but there was another image of these kind of ships guarding the cube, and I'm almost positive that's a Romulan base, essentially, where they're experimenting on the Borg, but we'll see. So, obviously, they're destroying what I believe is probably a Federation colony, something like that. Not sure if we've seen this image before. Sort of a random image here. It does look like Picard is in some civilian attire there.
I think he's on board that ship they keep showing us, whatever the ship is that they're on. Okay.
These are these mysterious forces that we saw that we speculated might be Section 31 or possibly Romulan agents that are chasing after our quote-unquote mysterious stranger. Another shot of this attack that's going on.
Right.
Some pretty big devastation there. You can see a planet almost looks like it's blowing up. I believe this is from Picard's mind. So this is probably, 10 forward. People said this is 10 forward. This is him in his mind. And I'm guessing that's maybe the destruction of Romulus or something like that in the background.
I think it might, in all honesty, that scene actually might be reflecting that planet that we see in the Picard comic that we're going to be talking about later. And he might
that's interesting.
He might be in the 10 forward section, actually, of that ship, whatever the name of it is, that isn't sticking.
No,
the USS, whatever it is.
Yes, it's. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, we can talk about that a little bit. All right, we lost the feed for 1 sec, but I don't think we really missed anything. So, yeah, we can talk about that more obvious in the comic review. This is the scene my friend wanted us to talk about. Okay. So we see in this scene, we've seen this scene before. This is basically Seven of Nine, obviously, and she is clutching someone. She's obviously crying. I did review this earlier with the voiceover, and during the voiceover, Picard is specifically saying people are dying. That's what he says in the voiceover during this scene. And then they show this scene of Seven of Nine clutching someone who obviously meant something to her. You can see she's distraught. It looks like this may be right before or maybe right after the sort of badass scene we see with the two phasers shooting everybody.
Right.
It looks like this might be like right after that or right before it. Like maybe she's reacting to this character's death and then she goes all badass, or, you know, maybe he got shot in the crossfire, you know, that kind of thing. So the big question becomes, who is this person? And what kind of person would make this reaction from Seven of Nine? It's hard to tell. A lot of people right off the bat thought this might be Hugh, that Hugh's going to die early in the show, and this is Hugh dead, and this is Seven reacting to his death. Some people think it's Icheb from Star Trek Voyager, the other Borg character that was rescued by the Voyager crew.
Right. I know what you're talking about.
So my friend pointed out, as far as she can tell, and she's looked at other, she said she even looked at other teasers and things like that. It doesn't appear this character has any implants, so she's thinking it's not Hugh, it's not Icheb. That just based on that. Also, some people have kind of commented on the hair that you can see. It doesn't really look like Hugh's hair. We don't know what Icheb would look like at this point, or if they would have the original actor or recast him if he's in it. We don't know any of that. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious. Did you have any theories initially or now as far as who this is and why Seven is reacting this way?
My initial reaction is those are some long sideburns.
Okay. Does that hint to anybody, or?
My initial thought is Elvis Presley, but that's not who it is. In all seriousness, you know, it could be, you know, that this is, you know, Seven and Chakotay's son. You know, that doesn't negate the idea that the other character is the daughter. You know, so there is that possibility. Beyond that, it's a character that I don't think it's Chakotay, that's for sure. Because I'm pretty sure Robert Beltran's not coming back for this. But I don't know. I mean, it could be someone who has had significance to Seven in the last little while that we haven't even met yet. I mean, to me, that's what I would think. I would think that this might possibly be like her and Chakotay's son, just because it looks more like it might be a guy than a lady. But nobody crucify me for that. I'm just judging by the angle here, and that's my thought.
Well, you're not the only person that has said that. That's all over Twitter. That a lot of people do speculate that this is Seven's son. And of course, the question becomes who the father is, right? If it's Chakotay, is it somebody else? That kind of a thing. We don't really know.
We do have another theory in the chat that we need to acknowledge that I think there may be some truth to. Our guest commentator here has said he thinks it might be Wolverine.
Sideburns Wolverine?
Yeah, sideburns equal Wolverine. So right now, there's
and he's putting it up a little bit more. You hear this?
Yeah.
He's the father. And I understand that one.
So
Efren, I would like to be the father as well. Because I have actually met Jerry Ryan in person. I met her at Star Trek Vegas, and yes, I totally get that.
You know, I eventually I'll have a camera set up and people will be able to see, but I wish I had a board behind me so I could pin up, likely suspects for this character, and I could pin up a picture of Wolverine, Elvis, and then a question mark.
Well, obviously your guess is as good as anybody else's. What I said initially to my friend when we were talking about this, I think one of the previous teasers, we were going back and forth about this, and I still kind of feel the same way. I think it's obviously somebody that's close to Seven. I think it absolutely could be her son. or just another sort of close relative. It could be like it could be some, like I'm kind of theorizing that Seven may be on Hugh's colony. That's how they're connected. That's kind of where she lives, or she spends a lot of time on Hugh's colony. That's kind of just my speculation because it would make sense from what I've heard from Jerry Ryan. She made some comments at Star Trek Vegas where she talked about the issue of the way Seven talks now. And I actually was someone who was like put off by that. And she said she was too. Because she was like, well, that's not how Seven talks. The direction she was being given, which I believe was Jonathan Frakes, directed that episode, the first episode she's in. She was basically told, no, you don't talk like that anymore. And she said she had a real problem at first figuring out how to do that because she's all like, well, then that's not Seven anymore. And what happened was she said she did this in her own head. This is what she said. She did it in her own head. But I think it still tells about what the story might be. She said, what if Seven had to start talking like a normal person because of the way she's treated by others? What if there's some sort of basically like Borg prejudice going on? So she deliberately started to talk more human.
Okay.
You follow?
Yeah, no, I get it.
So in that scenario, if something like that is going on and the Borg are sort of looked down upon or looked at with skepticism, sort of a racist sort of analogy that's going on, then I could see her spending a lot of time over on Hugh's planet because that Hugh's planet is only Borg as far as we know. That's the way it was left in the Next Generation. In fact, it's kind of funny because in the Next Generation, they kind of just totally just leave them to their own devices, kind of like Khan, right? They just leave them. Doesn't seem like the Federation is coming to help them, to study them. They're not trying to make them a member of the Federation. They just basically say, you guys have your own path now. We're just going to leave you alone, So I could see them being sort of like an independent system or whatever. And I could see her spending a lot of time there, meaning she would make a lot of friends. And this could be someone that's very close to her. It could very well be her son. Whether it's Chakotay is the father or not, I don't know if they're going to go there. So we'll see. It could just be someone that's a good friend of hers that we never saw, a brand new character. The thing is, I feel like if it's a brand new character, they're going to have to show some sort of relationship between Seven and this character. Otherwise, the audience isn't going to be involved. They're just going to be like, okay, well, we never saw this person. Why do we care? You know what I mean?
Well, and to take this conversation back to Batman v Superman for half a second, I want to kind of reiterate. It does need to be a character that on the surface, even if it's you have to be careful because if it's not a character we have any connection to, then the death will feel slightly hollow, just like you said. It's like, okay, well, so unless we really buy into the scene for however long it lasts, we're not going to have that resonance and we're not going to feel her pain. That's kind of one of the problems I've seen with a lot of modern storytelling. We're moving the story along so fast that we don't really have the connection to characters that we used to have. And see, that's a really good comment because here's what I was just about to say with Batman v Superman. I felt like the biggest missed opportunity in Batman v Superman was that Wayne Enterprises executive that Bruce Wayne was racing down the streets trying to save. Okay?
Yeah.
Because here's a simple change. They would have had to pay some money for this, but here's a simple change, a little bit more money, and that scene would have had so much more resonance. What if that had actually been Lucius Fox? And what if that had actually been played by Morgan Freeman? So when we see Bruce Wayne racing to save Morgan Freeman, he says he's Lucius Fox. We already have a connection to him because of the other Batman films. We don't need to see all that backstory because then in a subtle way or a not so subtle way, the Christopher Nolan backstory of how Batman got equipped, how he got started, the person who made a lot of his gadgets, kind of his right-hand person besides Alfred, Lucius Fox, when we see him die and we see, Ben Affleck's Batman screaming no, we might actually feel something in that moment.
Right.
And that to me is still the biggest missed opportunity because it's just some random dude. It's like, even as a Batman fan, I'm like, that character is nobody. That character is literally nobody. And that's kind of the problem is that I don't know if in the back of their head they're going, oh well, let's hold that in reserve for a later film. And sometimes it's not a good idea to sit on stuff. Sometimes if you have a way to have something have an emotional punch and you're trying to hook somebody at the beginning, you need to hook them at the beginning. You can figure something else out later. But I agree with the comment here. You have to make people care, and that's true. So this character has to be someone with enough connection to Seven or to Next Gen or to Voyager or to some of these characters that we've seen before, that when she's breaking down because this character dies, we all feel.
Exactly. Yeah, that's 100% what I agree with. And if it doesn't go that way, we're gonna know we're in some problems. I don't think, as far as what you've heard, I think Seven comes in. I don't think she's in the first episode. I think she comes in like in the second or third. Mm-hmm. Have you heard anything on that?
I've been honestly just staying away from some of the stuff because I would like to be a little surprised.
Oh, you're going to be surprised. Remember, we did our predictions on Mando, and we were wrong on everything. So you're going to be surprised. I don't think we got anything right. So I don't think we got one thing right on Mando when we did our prediction show, when we did our trailer breakdown. So, so you'll be surprised.
We had some great ideas, though.
The show isn't big on spoilers because we don't have any inside knowledge or anything like that. We're just going off the top of our heads here. So. But I do hope that, like you said, I hope this is relevant and there is some connection. A lot of people are speculating. So all I'll say is for that, I do think it has to be somebody important to her. And it has to be someone that's going to be like a family relation or something like that, or otherwise explained. So,
and just to clarify, once upon a time, I had some major insider knowledge, and I have the old NDA to prove it.
There you go. There you go.
It's no longer valid, but I did once upon a time. I used to be somebody, damn it.
You still are somebody, Dave. So anyway, I'll finish up the trailer here. That was the part that you really wanted us to look at. So.
Oh, that's kind of a cool shot.
Which one?
Just this old Romulan warbird. That shot where it was blasting at that ship looked fun.
Which is going to relate to our show later. There we go.
Yeah, right here. Yeah. The beginning of that shot, the way they flew in and the blast coming at the camera was kind of fun.
Because we are doing a Romulan retrospective and we are going to be talking about Balance of Terror. So very relevant for Star Trek Picard. And this is why. This is one of the reasons why. We've got the same ship, right, from Balance of Terror.
Yeah, it definitely looks like it.
I think all this other stuff, I remember seeing most of this stuff before. Oh, there's a really good view of the Romulan warbird right there.
Yeah.
We got that shot. We talked about that before.
Yeah.
Basically, it looks like these are almost all shots that we've talked about before. They're just arranged differently. Oh, we get a better view of this gun. I remember we were talking about this gun. I don't remember having this good of a view of it. That's pretty crazy looking, isn't it? So.
Oh, and I think they're punching up the visual effects too, because it looks like they're kind of upping the ante with some of the visual effects, because you can tell they're still tinkering with stuff. So.
Yeah, there's Hugh. Goes by really quick. There's this ship that they have. There's that badass scene we were talking about. Goes by really quick, so that's one of the reasons it's also kind of fun to do these trailer reviews, or especially these teaser reviews, because they go by really, really quick, So sometimes, I miss things all the time with this stuff where I'm just like, yeah, I didn't even notice that. Like somebody will talk about something online. I'll be like, yeah, I didn't notice that at all. Did not notice that at all.
I want to call it another comment here that we've got. If you could pull up the most recent comment from our guest commenter here. He stated here that someone said that Snyder wanted to totally disconnect Batman or to the Christian Bale or from the Christian Bale. And I get that. But the thing of it is that one of the things that makes, this is my personal opinion, one of my things that makes some of these franchises really fun and great is when you can build upon things. You don't have to have literal, obvious connections to things. You can allude to things and suggest things. People will sometimes draw their own conclusions, and it can bring deeper meaning. So I feel like that Well, obviously, they didn't go with my idea. They often don't go with my ideas. That was even true back when I was somebody. But anyhow, but no, the my thinking, like I said, with just that one scene is it just that death would have had more resonance. Because here's my crazy thing, because I never really got to talk about these trailers back then because we didn't have a live show like this. When I saw the original trailer for Batman v Superman, and I saw them alluding to that scene, and even when I saw some early set photos and stuff of that scene, in my mind, because they had told us that Batman or Bruce Wayne had moved on, they were talking like he hadn't been Batman for 20 years, which when you watch the film, it doesn't appear to be the case. But they said that he hadn't been Batman for quite some time, and he had moved on, and he was just living a civilian identity. And the circumstances that happened in Batman v Superman what caused him to come back out as Batman, to figure out what was going on, and to find a way to take down Superman because he considered Superman to be the most dangerous threat to humanity, right? So in my mind, what I thought that what that scene was going to be about is that the person up there in the tower might even have been Selena, and that little girl might have actually been their daughter. And I thought we were going to get is a Batman who really moved on. So, I always look at these trailers and stuff, and I always make up my own stories and concoct my own things. But I just felt like sitting in the movie theater watching that scene, the fact that character had no resonance. You can't make that character Alfred because you want Alfred to have a role in the story. But you could have made that Lucius Fox, and people would have had a little bit more of a connection to that moment. So that's just my feeling.
No, I agree. I think to me that's a good idea, and I do understand the Snyder's perspective of wanting to kind of get away from the Christian Bale Batman, but I question that decision. I don't think that's a good decision. I mean, that's what I would say. Is I don't think that was a good decision, especially in hindsight. I think remember the original. Well, they're not the original. I mean, the original Batman theatrical movie is actually the Adam West one, because there was a theatrical Batman with Adam West. But right. In terms of the Michael Keaton Batman, once we get to Batman Forever, the thing is that remember, we're recasting Batman at that point. Where we've got new directors at that point. And so the continuity is very shaky when you think about it. Right. But they kept Alfred the same. If you remember, they kept Alfred the same in all those movies to sort of ground them and give them a connection so that the audience could kind of say like, okay, so yeah, it's a new actor, but it's still Batman. But in reality, it was a completely different Batman. I mean, Val Kilmer's Batman is different than Michael Keaton's Batman, and George Clooney's Batman is different from all of them.
We shall not spend too much time on the Clooney Batman.
But my point is, Alfred was still in that one. Alfred was still in Batman and Robin. So that's my thing. Is I think just dovetailing on what you just said, you could have done something like that, and it's not a bad thing. And it's to me, it's like you're trying to be like, I don't know, too different when you're really not, because there's been a billion Batman stories already. So. Right. And obviously, Batman versus Superman is heavily influenced by the Dark Knight. So you know what I mean. Right. It's not like you're not reinventing the wheel here. You know what I mean. You're right. Taking somebody else's story, and you're doing your own thing with it. And let's see, he said, I agree. And Christian Bale did want to continue being Batman. So it is possible that someone, and he continued here, had a similar idea. So, we could have a whole big discussion on Batman versus Superman and the Snyder cut and all this stuff. But obviously that's not the focus of the show today. But it is good stuff, and it does actually relate to a lot of what we're talking about.
Go ahead.
Well, I start out with that article, which obviously, with the release the JJ cut, I think that's very much taken from the whole release the Snyder cut movement, so.
Right. So talking about wanting to disconnect things, if you'll let me take the lead here for a second, you'll share my screen. So I often warn people, because we did the warning at the beginning of the show, didn't we? I don't think I covered the warning as much as I normally do. So there may be some profanity. Just warning everyone. So, yeah, there you go. It's a live show intended for adults. There may be some profanity. People on the age of 13, plug your ears. Okay, so this is off of Bounding into Comics. And this story is the Washington Post publishes an article claiming Star Wars and John Williams' score reproduces harmful prejudices in pop culture. So it says here, and we can't show you the Washington Post story for a number of reasons. The first of which is sort of behind a paywall, which always makes me wonder, is that why they really wrote this story? So people have to read it, so they'll sign up for like a week or something to read the frickin' story, right?
Of course. Anyhow, of course, that's why they did it.
So they're behind a paywall. So Washington Post, you're not getting my money, but they're behind a paywall, all right? And then the second one is, I just don't know how much attention I want to give it. But anyhow, the Washington Post published an article written by co-host of the Global History podcast, Jeffrey C.J. Chen, that claims John Williams and his Star Wars score reproduces harmful prejudices in pop culture. Not only does Chen take issues with Williams' score, but he goes after the entire film franchise, claiming in his article that Star Wars is shot with Orientalization stereotypes, patronizing tropes that represent an imagined East or the Orient as inferior to the rational heroic West. For evidence of this claim, he proves to the conformity of the evil empire versus the scrappy American individualism. He points to the vague Eastern mysticism of the Force and its shallow come samurai practitioners, and the uncomfortable racial stereotypes embodied in the hookah-smoking Jabba and the miserly Watu, I think that's how you say his name, I forget. After attacking the franchise as a whole, Chen then specifically singles out John Williams' musical score. He details that the music for the heroes is done in the style of European romanticism, while those of the villains are inspired by non-Western music. Chen then declares that Star Wars builds on a long history of using Eastern music to depict evil on screen or to convey to moviegoers that they are entering an alien world. He then takes issue with Williams' iconic Duel of the Fates from The Phantom Menace. Okay, so we're going to stop right here. All right. How do I go about this? All right. I wanted to bring this up because within storytelling, okay, there is such a thing as playing with stereotypes. And there is sometimes this idea of playing with things that are kind of iconic ideals, okay? Sometimes because you want to subvert expectations, sometimes because you want to lean into expectations in order to build a hero up, tear a hero down, even sometimes build a villain up or tear a villain down, and I get all that. But I think the idea here is that it reinforces these negative stereotypes to discourage people from having an interest or being interested in these other cultures. So by being associated with these things, it permeates your mind as a young child and turns you negative or anti against other cultures, right? Or helps you indirectly develop a negative feeling. For example, he's talking about Oriental cultures, right? Okay, for me, it couldn't be more the truth. It couldn't be farther from the truth. Let me clarify that. I did not mean the way I said it. Could not be farther from the truth. Okay, I think this whole article is bullshit. All right, so I have a great fascination with Japanese culture, and specifically, I'm very fascinated with the idea of the feudalistic era, with the samurai. Because of things like Star Wars, I was inspired to actually train in martial arts and actually learn more about Eastern culture. So I don't see this. I honestly don't see nor hear what it is talking about. Towards the end of this article, it really puts out the idea. It says, do you think John Williams is racist? This is the stupidest freaking thing I've ever heard. This is one of the most celebrated film composers of all time. To draw inspiration from different things when you're crafting and putting together a story, everybody does that. Darth Vader's armor is inspired, by looking at samurai. But then so is Obi-Wan. Well, there is a heroic depiction of an Eastern culture. and an evil depiction of an Eastern culture. I think sometimes people are looking at things too hard and seeing things that maybe really aren't there. So I just find this whole thing to just be kind of distasteful and weird. And we were talking earlier at the beginning of the show, this idea of misinformation being the new norm. Here you go. But this has been going on for a long time. But this, to me, is a little beyond the pale. This is really reaching. And the fact that the Washington Post would actually publish something like this, I find very disheartening. How do you feel about this, Eric?
Well, you did send the article to me prior to the show, so I got a chance to read it. And I think you hit the nail on the head earlier when you said bullshit. This article is complete crap. The only sort of, I guess, commentary I can give on this entire idea is I was a musician. I was a bass player in a band. That's why I call myself Bass God 14. I was a bass player in a band for many years. We did various demos, professional studios and things like that. So I do have a little bit of perspective when it comes to music and writing music and all that kind of stuff. And I can say that the one maybe kernel of truth that might be in here is that, yes, people do use certain musical cues for certain things. I mean, it just makes sense. And there may be a kernel of truth in terms of what John Williams' thinking was or whatever, as far as putting little musical cues here and there for one side versus the other, particular with style, because there might be something to that. But it's not what he's saying. It's not what this person who's doing the article is really talking about. What he's talking about is nonsense. It's pretty much the definition of clickbait. You talked about earlier how this particular publication is behind a paywall because they are cowards and because they know that they can't, they're not going to make money any other way. So there's a reason why newspapers are dying, and this is one of them. And to me, it's just meant to inflame people. It's not meant to uplift people in any way. It's not meant to create any kind of rational debate. This is not someone who is trying to make anything better or uplift anyone or anything like that. He is just being a jerk. He's just being a jerk. That's the bottom line. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, I wanted to bring this up. It kind of went along with what we led the pop culture news segment off in its own way. But I couldn't believe that that's, because you do want to have contrasts between things, or you want things to clash or things to be different, to show the differences between a heroic movement and a villainous movement and whatever. And I get that. But I always felt more Nazi, you know what I mean, with the Empire than...
Well, what's the Imperial March? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
So
I don't get it. I just sometimes I feel like these people are really reaching at stuff. And like I said, this Washington Post article, I want to thank Bounty in the Comics for pointing this out, because I find that this is just some real bullshit. Now I don't remember after reading this article how the gentleman who wrote this on Bounty in the Comics feels about it, but I can just tell you right now that I just call it total bullshit, because while John Williams may have been thinking about having competing themes, right, or themes that clash in order to show differences between the two.
That's the psych operation. That's the little kernel of truth,
right?
Because I get that as someone who's done music, I get that. So
yeah, and as a storyteller, that's like I said, that's sometimes what you do. You will take these iconic, ideas that people have built up in their minds, whether visual or whatever, and you'll take them and you'll contrast them. But I don't know. I just some of this stuff to me just feels really reaching. So
we do have a good comment here that I want to acknowledge, which is some articles are tainted with writers' own agendas and cosmovision, which I take to mean their cosmology, their own personal worldview, because they themselves view the world this way. They're going to try to make everything else fit into their worldview. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I totally see that in this article. This is someone that has a particular worldview, and he wants you to see the things the way that he does. So,
yeah. So, anyhow, I just wanted to point that out. We can move on. I don't want to talk about this anymore before I start cursing up the storm.
Well, I did want to. So, with our news segment, I did want to kind of try to end on a little bit of a positive note. We kind of talked about this before the show. I just want to bring up an image here, and then no article this time. We're just gonna kind of talk about our own thoughts about this. Sorry, I got to get that share screen going. All right. We actually reviewed The Joker a few months back, and we gave it a glowing review. And in terms of the Golden Globes coverage, everybody is talking about the host, but I thought we would give some props to Joaquin Phoenix and his well-deserved award at the Golden Globes for The Joker.
Yeah, no, truly an incredible performance. And as a longtime Batman fan, it was really, we've been very lucky as fans of, for example, DC Comics and Batman, to have so many tremendous actors step into the role of the Joker and do some absolutely tremendous work. And what Joaquin Phoenix did with the standalone Joker film is just absolutely astounding. But like I said, with the character of the Joker, it feels like what they call that, an embarrassment of riches. We had so many tremendous actors step into that role and find such interesting things. I'm always amazed. Everyone always finds something different and interesting. And what they did in the Joker film was truly powerful and mesmerizing and completely different, from what everyone else had done before. They made it original and new and terrifying and incredibly captivating. But yeah, hats off to Joaquin Phoenix, a well-deserved win, as well as well-deserved for all those people associated with the Joker. Tremendous film and very, very well-deserved, in my opinion.
I couldn't agree more. I do apologize that my phone is ringing in the background. Hopefully that's not too disturbing. But I couldn't agree more. I think this is a great win for Joaquin Phoenix. This is a great win for the Joker. The Joker film was not without its own controversies, and Joaquin Phoenix was right in the middle of that. The director was right in the middle of that. The big thing I wonder now is what's going to happen at the Oscars. If Joaquin Phoenix is going to repeat at the Oscars, which often does happen with the Golden Globes. The Golden Globes are sometimes thought of as a sneak preview to the Oscars. So you got any predictions there?
We'll have to wait and see. I'm curious to see how it's going to play out. I think he definitely has a very high chance, a great chance. But we'll have to see. I'm just not sure how the Oscars are going to go. But if he does, it would be very interesting to see, because when you think about it, since Heath Ledger received an Oscar for playing the Joker sort of posthumously, and then if Joaquin Phoenix can actually win a Academy Award for playing the Joker, that's 2 Academy Award wins for playing a comic book character, and the same comic book character. There's something interesting there. So if he does win, we'll have to do a special all about the Joker and go through all the different iterations between comics and movies and TV, talk about all the different actors, all the different portrayals, whether you want to talk about the Fisher Price or the Peter Pan, like the turn-the-page adventure stories, all the way to, of course, the feature films and all the various animated incarnations. It'd be fun to do like a really fun deep dive Joker episode, maybe leading up to the Oscars if he gets a nomination. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I like that idea. I like that idea a lot. So I think we definitely should do that. If he gets the nod, we should go ahead and do a Joker retrospective. Talk about the various actors that have portrayed the Joker, animated and live action. So I think that would be awesome. So good idea there. And I wanted to end our news segment on a positive note.
And talking about a positive, were you able to get those images that we were talking about sharing?
Oh no, they didn't come out when I did the email.
We'll do it the next episode.
Interestingly enough, there was a comment here. I didn't know exactly what the context was. We had some stuff I wanted to show in regards to that, but And he did say Joaquin deserves at least the nomination for the Oscars. And I could not agree with you more. I think he deserves to win, to be honest with you. But yes, at the very least, he must be nominated, I think. And if he's not, it's kind of interesting because, when you think about this, the Golden Globes is the press corps. It's the press awards is what the Golden Globes is. It's the press who nominate these people. And of course, Joker had some pretty bad reviews. There were some people that were really upset with the Joker.
Right.
So it is interesting that they did, in fact, nominate him, and he won. So maybe the tide is turning a little bit. Who knows? We'll see. You can't judge everything by one movie or one performance, but it is interesting because, like I said, there was some controversy, and they weren't. The media has not always been kind to Joker. They created some really messed up stories with the Joker. There was a whole thing about we're going to be the theaters are going to be shot up. We need increased security. I mean, it's pretty nuts. It's pretty nuts what they were saying.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But I think we're good to go on to streaming wars.
All right, sounds good.
All right, let me get my banner up and get get my share screen going here. I've got two articles for you.
All right.
We don't have to get super in depth into them if you don't want to, but I do have two. Let's see. I'm not sure which was the first one I want to show here. And we always cover the streaming wars in our show because we think the stream wars is a very important and very big event that's going on right now. And a lot of places aren't giving it that much coverage, although a lot of people are, which is why I'm always able to find articles every week for us to talk about, because there are people that are talking about the streaming wars. So this article here, this is from CNBC. It is dated on Tuesday, January 7th. Megan Graham is the author. It says streaming wars will force media companies to choose between pricey subscriptions and ads. And isn't that what we've been saying? Haven't we talked about this? Isn't that exactly what we were just talking about, like in our prediction show? That absolutely this is what's going to happen, or at least it's going to be part of it. It's going to be a big part of it. So this is the mainstream media echoing our own coverage and our own conclusions. So as key points, according to a survey, 59% of Americans aren't willing to pay more than $20 a month for streaming services, while 75% say they won't pay more than $30. With Netflix charging $13 a month and leading the market with more than 60 million U.S. subscribers, more services are turning to advertisements for revenue. This makes sense. So what they're saying is they've actually gone and done a survey. The industry has done a survey, and they found out most Americans have decided already what their budget's going to be. And we've talked a lot about this in our streaming wars coverage, is price and how much is price going to influence people's decisions about which streaming services they're going to support. So this survey is saying the majority of people don't want to spend more than $20 a month on their streaming services. Services meaning plural. They don't want to spend more than that. And Netflix is already on the high end at $13 a month. And they are the dominant factor right now in the streaming wars. They have more subscriptions than anybody else. So how much money does that leave left? Not a lot, right? You can squeeze Disney Plus in there, right? You could squeeze, maybe Hulu in there or something like that, but that's about it, right? You can maybe squeeze one more streaming service in there if that's your budget, and you've got Netflix. Right. So, which the majority of them do. I think it's like 60 million people have Netflix. So the article goes on. It says the streaming wars are poised to heat up in a big way in 2020, but that doesn't mean consumers are jazzed to open up their wallets for them. HBO Max is scheduled to launch in May, following the recent debuts of Disney Plus and Apple TV Plus, all with a plan to take on Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon Prime Video in the battle for over-the-top viewers and cord cutters. Based on consumer preferences, it looks like a tough market. And this is the survey they talk about, where basically the majority of Americans are saying we do not want to spend more than $20 a month on our services. And this is something that from the beginning of our streaming wars coverage, I've been harping on, is cost. A lot of these people do not want cable all over again. They are not willing to pay cable prices. That's why they left cable. You know what I mean?
Right.
So this is let's see, who did the survey here? According to a survey from ad tech company The Trade Desk and YouGov, it was published on Monday. And that's the one that says it's 59% of Americans are not willing to pay more than $20 a month for streaming services. talk a little bit more about those. I wanted to see what they talked a little bit more about the ads. So they talk about here, they have a quote where it says, every survey I've ever seen in the industry shows that consumers hate ads. But consumers hate spending money out of their own pocket more than they hate ads. So when the option comes up, a lot of people will opt for the ad-supported versions. And I actually have gotten to the point where I don't hate ads because I like having free content. We have talked about previously that I recently did the entire Disney Plus package with ESPN Plus and Hulu. And the Hulu version that I get with the Disney Plus bundle is the ad version. And I'm not thrilled about paying for ads. That literally feels like cable again to me, you know?
Right.
I'm not thrilled with it. I like Hulu's content so far, particularly the anime. I've been watching with my kids. I mentioned I'm very disappointed with ESPN Plus. I think their marketing is like garbage. I think they are actually misleading people into what ESPN Plus, even with the app itself, it's messed up. But I do like the content with Hulu, but I don't like paying for ads. I'm at the point now where I'm fine with ads if it's free, and I don't complain about ads if it's free. But if I have to pay for it, that's where I really get on ads. That's where I really don't like ads. And I think you're in the same boat, right? You went ahead and you did the Hulu with ads as well, right?
Well, I didn't. When the subscription came up for renewal, my wife chose to go with the ad version because it was cheaper. I had actually been paying for the non-ad version. And it's ironic, like I said, the reason I signed up for Hulu is because I wanted to watch Space 1999. Because for me, the thing that really is driving what services I'm currently subscribed to, for me, it's all content. Content is king with me. It's what I want to watch and what's on there. For example, I'm still working my way through Justified for the third time on Amazon Prime. I really like that show, and I'm enjoying rewatching it, even though I've seen it like twice before. I'm going through the third time. Disney Plus, it's obviously The Mandalorian, although I've seen some fun Clone Wars and a couple of fun Rebels episodes. So I'm thinking about going back in and kind of deep diving on some of those a little bit more than I've had, because I didn't have cable at the time those shows were airing. So I missed a lot of that. And then, of course, with CBS All Access, I have that for Star Trek. I watched Balance for Terror on CBS All Access in preparation for this show. But when I have stuff on when I'm working, I watch a lot of original series Star Trek still to this day. I really like it. I really enjoy the remastered versions with the new computer effects and everything. So for me, it's all about content. When I subscribed to the DC Universe app, the thing I was waiting for was I was waiting for Swamp Thing. So once Swamp Thing went live, I subscribed to the service, and I was on there long enough, to try and make my way all the way through it. Unfortunately, I find with certain things, if it's not holding my attention, I don't like the Friday release schedule. It was just one of those things that's like I was liking Swamp Thing, but I knew Swamp Thing was already canceled. And I was like, so I don't know where this story's going, but it doesn't matter because it's our, you know what I mean? They're not going to be picking it up. They're not continuing it. Swamp Thing is apparently not going to show up in the Crisis event. So I was just sort of like, I don't get the point of this. And I was having issues. I loved the selection of the comics on there, but as I've stated previously, but the problem was the comic viewer, I kept going through pages too fast, and I found it frustrating. And then it was the problems with casting. I couldn't get it to cast easily to my different devices to watch the shows anyway. So it got so frustrating. I got rid of it before I'd even watched all the Swamp Thing episodes. I was just like, who cares? The show's canceled. I'm out. And it's a great show. That's the problem. It's a great show. So for me, content is king. I will apparently pay more than I should if I want to watch what's on there. Part of the reason I have not canceled Netflix yet, because Netflix is the one I keep wanting to get rid of. It's the one I've got that really itchy trigger finger to get rid of Netflix. I always log in on my computer here and I sit down and I'm like, Netflix, your day has come. And by the time I get ready to do it, something like Lost in Space Season 2 rolls out and I go, oh yeah, I want to watch that. So Netflix has done a good job of keeping me involved with the content. But the first time they go a little bit too long without something I want to watch, I might pull that trigger. Just saying.
We have a comment that I think they're looking to pay for all the original productions on all the services. And then he also mentions Netflix is losing money right now. And we've talked about that in our coverage, that Netflix is losing money right now because they are focusing on content. They're going into debt, even as much money as they make. Netflix is actually going into debt because they are producing so much content.
Right.
So the comments are right in line with what we've been talking about in our previous coverage and things like that. I did want to mention in this article, because you always got to mention the bias. This is a CNBC article, right? And it closes by saying there is a tremendous opportunity for free ad-based services to thrive. And disclosure at the end, Comcast is the parent company of NBC Universal, which owns CNBC. And we've talked about this. What kind of effect is the Peacock network, going to have on the streaming wars being ad-based? And obviously this article is meant to set that up a lot. But it makes some good points, because we've kind of said the same thing. But this is a CNBC article. They are part of Comcast and NBC Universal. So good on them putting that little disclosure on the end. And I want to make sure people understand that too if they're looking at our coverage.
Yeah.
And then I had one more for you. One more article, if I can pull it up here. And this is like just the beginning of this article. This is from the Motley Fool, which they do a lot of like financial news and things like that. Articles written by Pavan Jaraju. I'm sorry, I'm totally butchering his name. This was dated January 5th, 2020. And it says, the streaming wars, is YouTube the sleeping giant? And we have talked about this as well in our coverage of the streaming wars. Netflix is in an interesting position because they are ad-based. And this article also talks about the fact that, well, I'll show you the article. What it says: the streaming wars is YouTube the sleeping giant. The focus of the streaming industry has been all about big names like Disney Plus, Apple Plus, and Netflix. But those who ignore YouTube may be doing so at their own peril. And what this article talks about is that in a lot of ways, not only is it like the fact that YouTube is ad-based, but YouTube has the advantage of people like us, people that aren't costing them any money and are giving them essentially free entertainment for their service. But at the same time, it feels like, and this isn't the article just talks about that and that advantage that Netflix has in terms of, the fact that it says YouTube has an army of content creators. It says far from the bidding wars over high-priced content playing out in the marketplace between Netflix, Disney, Amazon, and others, YouTube is growing thanks to low-cost, user-produced content. Does YouTube understand this? I wonder if YouTube understands this. This is somebody else on the outside talking. So it says there are countless YouTube content creators out there with massive subscriber bases turning into channels that cover everything from nursery rhymes and short films to the latest gadget and movie reviews. So it's kind of funny to me because in a lot of ways, I feel like Netflix itself is trying to attract more and more of the big content providers. Like on my YouTube feed, I'm always seeing stuff from Saturday Night Live. I'm always seeing stuff from CNN. I'm always seeing stuff I could care less about. Not that I dislike Saturday Night Live. In fact, I do sometimes watch the Saturday Night Live clips that I see, but I do so less. And the reason I do so less is not because I hate Saturday Night Live, even though a lot of their skits fall flat on me. It's because I'm like, you know what? I'm not on YouTube for this corporate junk. I'm on YouTube to support small content creators that I believe in. People like That Junk Man. People like Analog Toys, people like Retro Blasting, people like Nerdrotic, Doomcock. That's why I'm on YouTube. It's not so I can watch an article from CNN, which I know exactly what their conclusion is going to be, love it or hate it, you know what their conclusion's always going to be. So I'm not there for that. I'm not there to see Jimmy Fallon. Okay, I don't like Jimmy Fallon. I've never liked Jimmy Fallon. So I don't like his. I don't like his humor. So I don't care about all that corporate junk. But my feed is full of it.
Right.
My feed is full of that stuff. So yeah, we have a comment. You know, I think they're looking to pay for all the original productions and all the services. Oh, sorry, that was an old comment. Sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like this guy really knows what he's talking about, and he understands what the strength of YouTube is and how it can really be a true factor and a true winner in the streaming wars. But I kind of wonder if Netflix, I'm kind of wonder if YouTube understands that, if Google understands that. Because it seems to me they keep trying to go to this shift. Now, they do have one success, and they talk about big players and big budgets. Cobra Kai is their big success, right? In terms of something with, like, you know, quote unquote big budget, big stars, that kind of thing.
Right.
And it's been a huge hit, and people really love that show. And I haven't seen all of it, but what I've seen, I have loved what I've seen from Cobra Kai. I think the way they flip the script, everything, the way that they are so respectful of the original characters, while at the same time bringing on new characters, is that's the way you do it. If you want to revitalize a franchise, you want to reboot a franchise, you want to make a sequel to a franchise, Cobra Kai is a way to do it, in my opinion.
I agree.
But their other sort of produced content has basically fallen flat. It hasn't created the kind of buzz, certainly, that you know that they were hoping for. So their strength is with this army of content creators, people like you and me. That is the strength of YouTube. People like all the YouTubers I just mentioned. That is the strength of YouTube. And if they get away from that, they're just going to be like just every other streaming service. They're going to be competing in the same exact market space with this incredibly saturated market. And then they're going to be a real loser of the streaming wars if they continue down the path they're going. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Because I think that is their strength. I think their strength is people, independent content creators is the strength of YouTube. And I think they need to figure that out, and they need to try treating them better.
Well, I agree with what you're saying. And of course, you know, I used to have not a huge, by any stretch of imagination, but I had been slowly building a little bit of a presence on YouTube. I left it because of the whole, the COPPA Enforcement Act, or whatever they're getting ready to do, and the fact that they're going to be starting to fine videos. And you know, I couldn't afford to hire an attorney to help me figure out what I needed to do. And I just decided, yeah, that's the truth. And I just decided to, you know, leave YouTube, you know, and I was just beginning to build a little bit of an audience. I had posted my first tutorial. It had been on there for a little while, but it had finally caught steam. And I think it had about 6,000 views at the time that I deleted my entire YouTube channel. But I didn't like the idea of creating high quality content that I'm giving to YouTube for free when I felt like they didn't have my back.
Right.
And that's what the warning videos they were putting out felt like, you know. And then when you see the FCC chairman, you know, coming out there and saying they're fish on a barrel, we're coming for them, you know, I just was just like, you know what, forget this. Just forget it. You know, I still do plan to do more tutorial videos. I've been dragging my feet on it just because of what happened with YouTube. You know, myself as well as other members of the of NASCA, the Northern Arizona Cartoonists Association, we put in a lot of time and effort, you know, building that small following that we had. And I mean, we had 149 videos on YouTube. That's a decent little bit of content.
Yeah.
All genre based. Some of it kind of just outright silly and fun, like our review of Darkman, versus really serious, you know, deep dive, interesting discussions. Now, some of these videos, if you're watching right now and you're watching on Facebook, obviously, I don't know if you know this or not, dear valued viewer, but you can watch some of these videos actually on the In the Studio, the Retro Retrospective Facebook page. A lot of those videos are still there. I still have 4 episodes that are still in production. I haven't finished them just because when I left YouTube, I just was really questioning everything I was doing. I am going to finish them, and they are going to be live here on the Facebook page. I do have a couple of them currently sitting on Vimeo, and was in the process of actually moving the show to Vimeo. And I am still seriously considering just moving the whole show to Vimeo. But there's a lot of editing I have to do now because of everything that's happened. I have to put the disclaimer on the front end. I think I might try and rebrand them with the Retro Rogues now, and just make them a Retro Rogues, NASCA co-production type thing, which you and I need to discuss that at some point. But, it just left a bad taste in my mouth. And because that's what I was going to YouTube for the John Campea show. I like the John Campea show. I haven't watched the John Campea show now in so long. And that was a lot of times how I got a lot of my early movie news. I liked Robert Meyer Burnett's Observation show. I really liked Retro Blasting. There were a lot of shows on YouTube, but when I left YouTube, I left YouTube. I literally just washed my hands of the whole thing. I haven't even watched any of our episodes on YouTube. My apologies. The whole thing just really, I couldn't believe, what happened. And it's interesting. I'm seeing more and more coverage kind of here and there. People are beginning to talk about it more and more in the mainstream media. But I think the damage is done. I think for a lot of us, I think the damage is done. And, it always goes back to that old adage, never have all your eggs in the same basket, and one of the things I like that we're doing here with the live stream, which the live stream show was your idea. One of the things I like that we're doing here is that we're having this go across on multiple platforms. There's lots of different ways you can watch the show. We're not limited to one. So if one platform goes down, you can go to the other one and watch it there. Once a new one emerges, we'll migrate over there too.
And along those lines, we are on Twitch. I forgot to announce that at the beginning of the show. The Twitch feed is up, so we are on Twitch right now. So
very cool.
We're on Twitch. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube.
Well, there you go. That's really cool. So and I agree with you. I think the strength, as well as the article, points out, I think the strength of YouTube is the independent content creators. Whether someone putting together, an animation as a test reel or a demo reel, or someone trying to produce their own limited cartoon or a web series, all of that stuff is valuable. It's important. And I love independent content. Independent content is where new ideas come from. We've talked about how some of these bigger productions seem to be taking a lot of those ideas, whether intentionally or unintentionally anyway. So, there's something to be said for a lot of that. But but at the same point, I do feel like, YouTube, I think they did kind of stab some of us in the back. That's my own personal opinion. That's how I feel. Rightly or wrongly, that's how I felt. And that's why I shut the channel down in the middle of the night. I just got so angry. I was just like, you know what, I'm done.
But I like this this particular article and the author of it, because he basically was saying that the strength of YouTube is the independent content creators. That's how they can really win the streaming wars or be a major player in the streaming wars, not continuing this corporate path that they seem to be on right now.
Right. And so, I do hope that YouTube realizes that soon, because I noticed I was skimming the article while you were kind of scrolling through it. And one of the things I noticed is they had a big thing that YouTube was excited that they bought Dick Clark's New Year's Rockin' Eve with Ryan Seacrest. And all I can think of is like, whatever,
exactly.
I know there's people that's going to watch that, but it's like Dick Clark's gone. Okay. I know he still has a production company. I know there's people that probably still work there. I'm glad that you're still going strong. Good you. But it's just the whole idea. It's like it's a gentleman with a brand that's outlived the person who created it. And then Ryan Seacrest is tacked onto it. He's got his own brand. I know he's popular. A lot of people like him. But to me, that's the complete...
I think we lost the feed for a second there when you were making your point. You said You basically were saying with the Dick Clark Rockin' Eve, it's what now? We lost the feed for a second.
I just said that with that, it is a brand that's outlived its original creator.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you have another person who has a profitable brand. I know a lot of people like Ryan Seacrest. I'm not a huge fan, but good on him for making a good living. But at the same point, when I look at it, it's like I just wish that YouTube would put more effort behind those independent. Maybe split it up. Maybe do 50-50 between these big corporate initiatives and 50% with your independent content creators in terms of pushing them forward. Or here's a shocker, at least do 25-75. Like, I don't know, like a little bit more. I don't know. I feel like that is the strength of YouTube, and that's what YouTube is built on. And it is built on those shows like you were talking about, like Junkman, like Retro Blasting, like the John Campea show.
It's called YouTube. It's YouTube. The old tagline used to be broadcast yourself. YouTube, so.
Right. Slowly becoming corporate tube. Or is that corporate lube? Yeah.
No, you're right. That's right. And anyway, I do applaud the person who wrote this article, and I think that he kind of gets it, and is trying to kind of show a path that where the YouTube can be successful and can be this wonderful creative platform for people.
Right.
Hopefully it'll get back to that. I don't know if it will. Like you said, we're not putting all our eggs in one basket. The comments we're getting are from Twitter. So, not from YouTube. So, we're not putting all our eggs in one basket. So we'll just keep doing what we're doing,
And it's interesting because most of our comments prior to that have actually been coming from Facebook. So there's something to be said for that. So
Exactly. All right. Should we get into Countdown?
Yep. Let me pull the graphic up here. Give me just a second to get the right one. Here we go.
All right. So we are going to have a review of Star Trek Picard, issue 2 of Countdown. This is the comic book series. We did review the first issue a while back on a previous episode. And this particular issue has been out a couple weeks now. But we're just getting to it. We did find out when we were kind of talking back and forth and off the show that apparently issue 3 is not coming out until after Star Trek Picard airs, which I think both of us found a little bit shocking. It is what it is. I thought the whole point was to get this story out before the show, because what this comic is dealing with is basically when Picard was still in Starfleet, and he was basically trying to help the Romulans to evacuate from the Romulan Empire, because it wasn't just Romulus affected. Apparently, the entire Empire was affected. So they also had to evacuate colonies. It wasn't apparently just Romulus. So to kind of review issue 1, basically what happened was that Picard himself was going to a particular planet that had, I think, it was supposed to be a relatively small colony of about 10,000 Romulans. He was going there to basically survey it, kind of get those people ready. And then the twist at the end was there's a native population on this planet of like 4 million, they said, something like that. Or
yeah, it's a very high number.
Millions of people.
Yeah, there's no way they could evacuate the sheer number of people that were. It's literally like trying to evacuate like a whole nother one of the Romulan throne worlds or whatever. And Picard was shocked because to the Romulans, these people weren't entities or beings that needed to be saved. They're just like cattle or animals or whatever, because they're very much a slave, an enslaved people that's doing their bidding. And, of course, to them, they're not worthy of saving. So they didn't even tell anyone that all these people were there. So it goes from a simple survey, we'll figure out how we'll fit this in. We'll tack this on to the rescue mission we're already doing. And then it turns into what? So an interesting twist for the comic, that's for sure.
Right. So in the previous comic, in issue 1, basically at the end of the story, Picard is thrown in jail. He's not going to go along with what the Romulan authorities want to do, which is basically just abandon the native population and let them have their own fate. Picard says that's not right. It's not what he signed up for. Obviously, that gets him thrown in jail. So that's where we were left off. So in the second issue, we basically begin there. I think they do a little bit of I got the issue right in front of me just so I can reference it. So we basically start there at the same place. We're kind of introduced to some new characters, which I think they might have been in the previous one at the Vineyard. So we kind of have a little bit of indication of where these characters are going. But Picard has basically been kind of put under house arrest. I'm looking at the issue right now. I mean, he's confined, but he's still sitting there with the governor, and they're having wine and things like that, and they're discussing the entire situation. And in the middle of all this, there's a breakout. The governor's headquarters is attacked. And who's attacking? It's the natives. The native population has apparently risen up and is attacking the governor and attacking the Romulans, which I thought was an interesting twist. I was cool with that. It seems to me that they the idea that these are just stupid brutes or whatever, they have no idea what's going on. That would be kind of silly, right?
Right.
They are a sentient species and all that. So they do go ahead and they do attack the governor's headquarters, and they break Picard out. Along with the new character. I don't know her name, but we do have the new character that's going to be in the series. She is in this book. She is the lieutenant commander. Not sure how I feel about her, especially with the JL thing. I've said I'm not a fan of the JL thing at all. It doesn't fit Picard to me. That's kind of disrespectful to me. But she's there, and she gets out as well. So now they're out, and we have to figure out what's going on, right? With this uprising,
right?
And it turns out that apparently, and obviously this is full of spoilers. We're just going over the whole story so we can kind of evaluate it. So it turns out that the primitives, if you will, that have been doing this uprising, they're kind of being supported by the local Tal Shiar agents, which is kind of weird, right?
Yeah, I thought that was kind of strange.
I think that's very strange. So apparently the local Gestapo, okay, this is the equivalent. These are the secret police. The local Gestapo has become sympathetic to the primitives. I'm just using that term. The native population. That's what I should say. The native population. They become sympathetic to them, which is, they kind of give you a little bit of what's going on. Apparently, these Tal Shiar agents aren't like your traditional Gestapo. They're more like spies that are basically integrated into the population to keep an eye on things. And I could see where, I guess, if you were in that position, kind of the same way that happens with undercover agents. If you've seen Donnie Brasco or anything like that, undercover agents can become very sympathetic to the people that they're watching, the people that they're accumulating evidence on, right?
Right.
So I guess that's kind of what's happened here, is the Tal Shiar agents have become sympathetic to the native population and are essentially helping them because they don't agree with the policy of the governor and presumably probably the policy of the Romulan government in general, right?
Right.
This is one part of lore that I've talked about that I like, because we've always heard the Romulan Empire. We've always said the Klingon Empire. I mentioned this before. I've always kind of assumed in my own headcanon, of course, the Klingons being an empire must have other races that they've conquered and taken over, because they talk about conquest all the time. If you're an empire, that's what you do. Colonization isn't just sending your own people to other planets the way the Federation does. It is the subjugation of other people, right? Native people, that kind of thing, just like in our own history. That's what empires do. The British Empire, you know what I mean? That's what they do. That's what empires do. So I kind of like the fact that with the Romulans, we kind of start to see a little bit of that, where we're seeing, yes, that's exactly what they do. They go to planets with inferior technology, and they take it over, right? And they exploit the local population. I bet the Klingons did the same thing. If they don't even, they may even still do it. But we just don't see it. And so that is one thing that I like seeing in this. So we have that kind of scenario going on. And here's the thing. This is when we were talking back and forth about why I really wanted to talk about this issue. Aside from the fact that we're doing a lead up to Picard. Obviously, we're going to be focusing on leading up to Picard up until the debut of Star Trek Picard. After we get all this information, so we've kind of got this new situation where now the primitives know what's going on. I keep saying the primitives. I'm using the Romulan term. I've been brainwashed by Romulan propaganda. Right. So, the natives now are actively resisting the Romulans. They obviously know what's going on. They want to get off the planet, and they're being helped by the local Tal Shiar agents. So that's one that I think that twist is enough, don't you think? To me,
right. Yeah,
that's enough to deal with.
That's plenty in 3 issues.
Yes, we only got 1 issue left. So then all of a sudden they add this other thing. What's that?
I said it's actually probably too much for 3 issues.
Right, it's too much for 3 issues. But then they add this other twist, and this is what really got me, and this is what I really want to talk to you about. Then the Romulans turn on the Federation because, Picard's ship is still up there in orbit, and they basically take over the ship. And I'm like, wait, what? Okay. Are the Romulans that stupid? They're going to take over the flagship of the rescue operation. And it seems to me they kind of give like this very weak explanation. Like they try to establish that the Romulans are kind of like, oh, they're very suspicious of the Federation. I'm like, no, they're not. They're not that suspicious. They know the Federation wants peace. They know how the Federation works. You know what I mean? Right. So it's like, come on. So what they think that the Federation is going to nefariously throw them, program all the ships to fly into a star or something like that. They know the Federation wouldn't do that. So that was the thing that I really kind of got me at the end. Not only did they open up this big can of worms with the native population and these Tal Shiar agents, which I'm just kind of like, that's crazy to begin with. But then the governor goes ahead and takes over Picard's ship. And I'm like, how are you going to resolve this in 1 issue? One more, 22-page issue. Because that's like too much for me. That's what I really wanted to hear your reaction on and what you think about that.
Well, here's the thing. On one hand, I liked a lot of, there was some interesting artistic choices in how the artist from the last issue was handling some of the elements, even though I think I liked the first issue a little bit better. I feel like this creative team was under quite a crunch to put this together. But here's my overall takeaway with this book. And I don't mean to disparage the creative team because I hated when people used to tear the books apart that I was working on. This story, they were trying to do so much. And I'm like going, how are you going to resolve this before the show? And then I just kind of forgot about it. It didn't really stick with me. I think it's an example of trying to do too much. So that's my takeaway from this issue.
Yeah, I think they are trying to do too much. I'm especially well. We have a good comment, by the way, from Ballerina KC. She is my friend who that I wanted to do that teaser review for.
Okay.
Yeah, she's asking if Sella's going to be involved. Now Sella, of course, if anybody has done Star Trek Online, Sella is very prominent in the Romulan Empire. She has actually taken over the Romulan Empire in the aftermath of Romulus's destruction. That's in the online game. And there is a plot in the online game where she's involved with this power struggle with the Tal Shiar. There's this big power struggle between her and the Tal Shiar. And then also there's a breakaway. There's a Romulan Republic now, which is like a breakaway from the Romulan Empire. So there's essentially almost like 3 factions within the Romulans. And a lot of people have speculated that Star Trek Picard is actually going to take a lot from Star Trek Online, because we know the Borg situation with the Borg being experimented on by the Romulans. we know that's going to be happening in Star Trek Picard, and that is in the Star Trek Online game. So as far as Sela and Tasha Yar being back, I have speculated on the show that perhaps we will have one more legacy character come back, and to me, Denise Crosby, Sela would make a lot of sense.
Right. It does make a lot of sense, and I hope they do that. Like I said, I am hoping for more connection, to events that happened in Next Gen, events that happened in Voyager, in the films. That's what I want. I want to see a continuation of the stories that we're familiar with. I would like to see, an acknowledgement even of the Countdown series that led into the Kelvin era, the first of the J.J. Abrams movies. Because in that Countdown series, which I think it was called Countdown, in that series, Data was...
I do find that confusing that both series are called Countdown. Both comic series are called Countdown. And what we're referring to is previously with the Kelvin timeline, they did a prequel comic book also called Countdown that basically focused on the same thing, the destruction of Romulus. So it seems to me that obviously this Countdown is kind of meant to, fix that, right, because of things that they're not going to go with.
Right. And so I'm very much hoping that that they will connect the dots between the history and the characters and the things that we know. That's one of the things that Cobra Kai does incredibly well, is by bringing those characters back that we know and moving their story forward and showing us where they are today, or in the context of Cobra Kai, where they are today. Whereas I'm hoping in the Picard show, I'm hoping they do that as well. And I was kind of surprised in the Countdown comic that even the Countdown comic avoided using a lot of the Next Gen characters that we know, because it wouldn't have costed them anything extra to use them in this. They could have just littered this thing with characters that we know. I mean, this whole lead up could have just been dripping with characters and planets and things that we're very, very familiar with, and just get everyone just really salivating, exciting for Picard. And then you get into Picard and, well, it's all new, So I was kind of surprised, because I think we talked about the last issue. I'm kind of surprised that they're not on Riker's ship. It just, I don't know. That's my thing with a lot of this stuff, is that I don't know if it has, you read a lot of, I don't know. I read a lot of stuff. I see a lot of stuff. They said it has to do with royalties and ownership and contracts and all this other stuff. And so they can't use certain things. So maybe there is something involved there, but I do hope that it would make sense to me that Seal would be involved. And I think it'd be really fun and interesting to see that. And it would be a fun surprise, because we haven't seen anything that's really led us down that path to question right now who's running the Romulan Empire.
Right.
I haven't given it a lot of thought.
Like I said, in Star Trek Online, it is Sela. It is Denise Crosby's character. She's the one that's basically in charge of the remnants of the Romulan Empire.
Well, I very much like that idea, and I hope that's what they do.
So I guess we'll see. Now, as far as the comic book goes, like I said, that was the biggest thing to me. Was I do feel like I think our takeaway is I feel like they're trying to do too much and they're going in sort of weird directions. So I am going to be very curious how they resolve it. I am curious just to see what happens, because I do think they're taking on quite a bit with this particular comic. And, I said it before in our review of issue 1, I feel like the creative team was probably sitting in a room with whoever was sort of in charge from representing CBS All Access. And they would say, well, like, what if we do this? And they were like, nope, can't do that. What about this? Nope, you can't do that. Said, this is what we're going to do, Right. That's kind of how I feel about it. And I just, like I said, the twist, because I read the issue before you did. And so I've been waiting like a couple of weeks to talk to you about it, because I'm just like, yeah, that twist at the end, that to me, I'm just like, how are you going to get out of this in one issue? It's like this, you've now opened it up where this could be like its whole like a whole series in and of itself. All this crazy stuff happening with the Romulans during this evacuation. And to me, my understanding was that this series was meant to basically tell us why Picard left Starfleet.
Right.
Why he left Starfleet. And so I don't know if that's where we're going to be in issue 3.
I don't think it's going to tell us the total reason why. And the way you get out of this, to be completely honest, is someone destroys the ship. That's the way how you resolve issue 3 in a way in which nobody wins.
Yeah.
Is that they get back on board the ship, they let as many people into the escape pods as they possibly can, and they destroy the ship. And then whatever happens with this planet is now cast into doubt. You know, Picard just lost a Federation starship. You know what I mean? It puts the whole rescue mission, it puts everything in a weird situation. If he goes to this planet to pick up 10,000 people, everything went sideways. The Romulans are saying one thing, Picard's saying something else, and the ship's gone. And a whole bunch of Federation officers are dead. Who are they going to blame? Who are they going to believe? So, you know, I mean, I think that's how you end the 3rd issue, is you end up blowing up the ship. Because then nobody gets off the planet, really. Nothing ends well for anybody. A bunch of people die. It's a giant catastrophic disaster. And then, like I said, the Federation finds himself in a position of who do they believe? You hope they're going to believe Picard, but if it's only him and one other person, and that's it, and all these people died and the ship's gone, and the Romulans are going, oh no, this is what happened. You know, I mean, I could see that could drive a wedge between Picard and the Federation. What do you mean you don't believe me? You know, politically, they may have to choose to believe what the Romulans say. So I think that's how you end. I really think because the stakes are so high, I really think that's the only way you end this issue. You destroy the ship.
It'll be interesting. I guess we'll find out. But it won't be for a little while. Like I said, it's apparently the next issue isn't coming out until after Star Trek Picard premieres.
All right. Are we good to move on to the next topic?
Yeah, I think so. Let's talk about Romulans.
All right. So I'm going to switch the graphic here out. So we're going to start off by talking about, of course, the debut of the Romulans in Star Trek. That, of course, is linked to the original series. It'd be Season 1, Episode 14, Balance of Terror. This show originally aired on December 15th in 1966. The director was Vincent McEvity. Apologies if I'm saying that wrong. And it was written by Paul Schneider. This is very much one of those sort of like submarine kind of shows, I feel like, or submarine stories, where the ships are kind of, because the bird of prey is always turning invisible, and because of how claustrophobic the Romulan ship feels, it just felt very much like a submarine show. I mean, I know they did that in Wrath of Khan, but I feel like this one kind of does that too, because they don't kind of know where each other are at times. It just felt kind of like that. You know, the ship's on the surface trying to hit the submarine that's, you know, under the water. This is...
Well, it's actually based on a movie, and that's the premise of the movie that it's based on.
Oh, well, there you go. I did not know that. You know some facts about this that I didn't. Now, I've always loved this episode. It's one of my favorite episodes. I haven't done a lot of deep dive into the inspiration for this episode. I've always just taken it at face value. The really interesting thing, of course, with this is there is, which I think we're going to see play out, is there is a story here about racism. One of the characters, which is Styles, is sitting in the navigator's position, which is usually the position that's occupied by Chekhov. Styles actually comes up later in Star Trek. I think he was originally intended to be the original captain of the Excelsior, or he was the captain of the Excelsior during the transwarp trials, because in Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock, when the Enterprise is being stolen by Kirk and crew, Styles is the one commanding the Excelsior that goes after the Enterprise. He's the guy who tells Kirk, if you do this, you'll never sit in the captain's chair ever again. It's very interesting. I've always loved that kind of banter between the two of them and Star Trek 3 because of the connection to this particular episode, because they're antagonistic here too.
I had no idea there was a connection between Star Trek 3 and Balance of Terror.
Oh yeah, that's Styles. It's the same actor. It's him reprising the role, which is really kind of cool. And it's very interesting to see kind of the countenance and the way he carries himself in Star Trek 3. I think it's just a continuation of the attitude that we see, honestly, in this particular episode. His family, a portion of his family was killed. Actually, they were on a Federation-occupied planet on a settlement. The Romulans attacked it during the Federation-Romulan War.
I need to correct you. It was the Earth Romulan War. There was no Federation. It was the Earth Romulan War.
Well, there you go. See, I'm not as much of a Star Trek nerd as everyone says I am. But in that big pivotal war between the Romulans and Earth, they did not have the advanced communications capabilities that they have in the later shows. So they haven't seen each other. But again, it was an all-out war. Styles lost his family, and he still carries that with him. So he's very bitter about that. And it kind of comes out in sort of a racist tone, because when Spock is able to plug into their internal systems, because they're trying to find a way to detect the ship. And in the process of that, Spock is able to actually somehow plug into the cameras and the systems inside the ship and get a sense of what their bridge looks like. And then the Romulan commander turns and looks at the camera, and we all go, "Oh my God, it's Spock's father." No, he turns and looks at the camera.
We hadn't seen that yet. That hadn't happened yet.
We see legendary Star Trek actor Mark Leonard, who's actually playing the very first, to me anyway, the first Romulan, the Romulan commander. He's the first one we see. He looks just like a Vulcan. Styles freaks out, and he starts saying stuff like, "Spock can translate their language. He's one of them," and he goes on this kind of racist thing. There's also an interesting kind of undercurrent to this story too, about a tragedy, like the tragedy that happens, in war and in military conflict and battles. There is a young couple that at the beginning of the show, they're about to get married. They actually both work in the phaser control room. And it's interesting to see that too, that the phasers have such a huge functioning mechanism. And to me, it reminds me back. I think they do it a little bit better in Wrath of Khan, where they're loading the torpedoes.
Yeah,
they're
in the torpedo bays, yeah.
Yeah, they're rolling the cannons out on the deck kind of idea,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But we see them in the original Trek doing their version of that, where they're in the torpedo control room, which is the phaser control room, and they're kind of getting all their weapons together, and the two of them actually work together. Work relationships are never a good idea, kids. But anyhow, they work together.
I just want to point out, there's something else we see, which I don't think we've seen in any of the episode, which is we actually see the Enterprise's chapel. The Enterprise has a chapel, and we actually see it in this episode.
And it's interesting, too, because Kirk says, in accordance with our many beliefs, too, which I thought was interesting. It's a very inclusive message, which is fun. So as the show rolls on, spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen Balance of Terror, they get into a battle. The Romulans are destroying outposts, like on the edge of, I think it's a neutral zone, isn't it?
It's basically, there are outposts on both sides of the neutral zone. So on the Federation side, it's the old Earth bases that were established after the Earth-Romulan War, and presumably the Romulans have the same thing on their side.
Right. So they're going through, and they're taking out, and they're sort of like poking the bear to see what the Federation has, like if this cloaking technology can be detected, what their defenses are like, trying to see, where they are militarily, which is interesting because the Romulans always seem to be portrayed as sort of that, empire building, warlike people. They're always building and expanding the empire, and they're doing it through force. Now, Mark Leonard's character, the Romulan commander, he's seen a lot of it, and he's kind of on the tail end. he's sort of like thinking, I don't know if I want to keep doing this anymore. And he seems like he might be ready to leave service, essentially. In a lot of ways, his character's in a similar place that we find Pike in the original pilot episode of Star Trek. He feels like he's on the tail end of his career, and maybe he's ready to see his way out of service. Anyhow, a lot of battles.
That's actually a good analogy because, that there is a similarity there between how Pike is depicted in the original pilot and how the Romulan commander in Balance of Terror is depicted.
So they have a lot of different clashes. I like the remastered version because you get to see the ships really well. It's a lot of fun. They have a lot of different battles, different things kind of evolve. And then towards the end of the episode, of course, the Romulan ship is destroyed. They actually just detonate the ship. They destroy it intentionally, so they self-destruct. And then the Federation crew is a little shocked because the Romulans are still that empire-building, warlike race that they were when they had their war many, many years ago. We have a better understanding of who they are, at least Kirk does anyway. Kirk thinks he does. And that's our initial introduction to the Romulans. And then, unfortunately, the young gentleman who was going to marry the young lady doesn't make it. He dies. And the episode ends with Kirk trying to console her. But Balance of Terror has always been one of my favorite episodes. It has a lot of action to it, but it has a lot of story and a lot of tension. And to me, it just always felt like that submarine warfare kind of story that they would eventually do in a much more updated fashion when they did Wrath of Khan. So that's my personal feelings and recollections on Balance of Terror and the introduction of the Romulans. But it gives us the classic things that we know. They're empire building. They're not afraid to fight. They show their resolve when they destroy the ship. They don't want to be taken prisoner. But they're very, very warlike. They're very mindful of building an empire. And even though Mark Leonard's character is on that precipice of maybe not wanting to do this anymore, he still destroys the ship.
Right.
He still can't betray who he is. And I think
he still follows his duty, even though, like, his personal opinions. I actually like this theme. I like exploring this theme, which I call duty versus honor, because honor is personal, duty is to the collective. So I feel like, in his own personal honor code, he feels like the Empire is too aggressive. These wars are basically meaningless. They're just getting their own people killed. He laments it, but as a soldier, he does his duty, and at the end, he destroys the ship because he's not going to allow it to get into Federation hands.
Right. It's a great episode, and it tells us a lot about the Romulan people, besides just introducing us to them and the fact that they have, birds of prey painted on the ship, which eventually get our naming nomenclature, warbird and such for the different ships. But it's a great episode. If you've never seen it, it's definitely worth watching. And again, original series episodes are available on a lot of services still. Obviously, you can watch it on CBS All Access. You can obviously watch it on Netflix. There's a lot of great different places where you can actually watch this. But if you have the chance, if you've never seen it, or if you have seen it, and here we are running up to Picard, I think this episode is definitely worth revisiting to get a sense of who the Romulans originally were when they were introduced. And then we're going to segue into who they are when we see them much, much later in the Next Generation.
I just want to add the film that this is very heavily inspired is called The Enemy Below. And I've always wanted to see it, and I never have. So I do want to throw that out there as well, that if anybody's interested in seeing that film, my understanding is it's a very good film, and it is what this show is based on. And this particular episode always shows up in top 10 Trek lists, always. It's not always number one, but it's always in there, in the top 10 of Trek of all time.
And I think deservedly so. This is one, definitely this is one worth revisiting, just period, if you haven't seen it in a little while. But we both agree this is definitely worth watching and revisiting before Picard. So do you want to talk about the next one?
Yes, let's talk about the Next Generation's introduction to the Romulans. Let's talk about the Next Generation episode, Neutral Zone. Neutral Zone has a lot of parallels to Balance of Terror that we're going to talk about a little bit later. But I'm going to sort of just run down the episode. This episode, I think, is actually very important for Star Trek Picard for a lot of different reasons. But it's also very important for Romulan lore in general. The funny thing is that, the Next Generation kind of changed formats a little bit in that they always had sort of an A story and a B story, right? Right. Unlike the original series that usually was just one story. Star Trek: The Next Generation took this sort of A and this B story scenario, and you can really, this is actually the B story. The A story in this episode is actually about a group of humans from like our time who were cryogenically frozen after they died and then were revived. I don't know if you remember all that, but that's really what the main story of this episode was. And to me, it was a good story. In fact, this is the last episode of the first season. A lot of people don't like the first season of The Next Generation. I actually do like a lot of the first season of TNG. I acknowledge some of the problems with it, and there are some episodes that I think are absolute clunkers, but this isn't one of them. I think that the series actually ended very strong. And one thing I found in my research of this episode was that one of the things that affected it was there was a strike going on. There was like a writer's strike going on when this episode was starting to be put together. So they kind of had to mash it together very quickly. And that'll get into some of the more of the lore aspects we're going to talk about later as we go through the episode. So as I said, the A story is really just about, it's totally unrelated to the Romulans. What has happened is that Picard has been off essentially at a meeting, mysterious meeting. And when we first come onto the Enterprise, Riker's in command, and they come across this derelict. And it looks like a space station, more or less from our time. I can see some elements of what looks like an Apollo module almost on it. It's kind of a neat looking little satellite thing. And they come across it and they realize it's from Earth. And it's just sort of a curiosity for them because I guess running into space junk isn't that uncommon for them because they're not like, oh, wow, a vessel from like the 20th or 21st century. Let's check it out, Right. To them, it's just kind of space garbage. But the very curious Commander Data is like, well, I want to check it out because that is part of history, and he shows interest in it. So Riker allows Data to go on board with Worf. They do find these cryogenically frozen people. There's more pods, but only 3 of them are still active and occupied. Apparently, some of them, the seal's broken. These people are clearly dead. So Data thinks, okay, this ship is falling apart. The right thing to do is to take these people back with me. So that's what he does. And then in the meantime, Picard gets back on the ship. He doesn't even really know what's going on. He's back on the ship. And immediately what he tells everybody was, I just had a meeting. We're going to the neutral zone. And of course, everybody's freaked out by that because we find out in this episode that the Federation and the Romulan Empire really haven't had any contact with each other for like 50 years, which is crazy. So it's very much echoes the situation in the original Star Trek episode Balance of Terror. So there's been this long gap where the Federation has had no contact with the Romulan Empire whatsoever. So the Romulans, once again, are very mysterious, very much, everybody's apprehensive about dealing with them. We also find out in this episode that apparently Worf's colony, Khitomer, was destroyed by the Romulans while the Klingon Empire and the Romulan Empire were actually allied with each other. And that's the first time we actually hear officially about that Klingon-Romulan alliance. Because sometimes I know a lot of fans are like, well, where does that come from? That's never in any of the shows, blah, blah, blah. No, it actually is in the show. Worf says Romulus and the Klingon Empire were allies at the time that his parents were killed at the Khitomer massacre. They had an alliance. So that's one of the reasons that Worf hates Romulans so much. And that theme we keep seeing again and again in later TNG episodes. That this is why Worf has some major issues with Romulans. So the episode progresses. It mostly focuses on these three people that they find in the module, that the people that were frozen. One of them, it turns out, was a homemaker. There's a line where they don't know what a homemaker is. They assume maybe that she's like a, apparently there's no housewives anymore. Nobody takes care of houses anymore because they assume that she's like was involved in like home construction or something like that.
Right.
And then they have another character that was apparently like a banker, broker, some big Wall Street guy, rich guy. And then they have another guy that was an entertainer, and he was like a country Western entertainer. And I think actually he's the most entertaining of the three. He's actually kind of funny, and he actually is able to adjust to the situation better than the other two are, because it turns out that the female, she didn't even know about this, that this was going to happen to her. Her husband apparently did it after she died. She thinks because in his mind that kind of kept her alive, because he couldn't deal with her death. She never agreed to this. The banker guy, he basically is real arrogant, and he's like, "Hey, this worked. I defied death. And I'm going to get all my wealth and my power back because I was only with the best." And of course, this is also the episode where we kind of learn a little bit more about the economics of the TNG era Star Trek. And we get some lines that later on, I think Deep Space Nine really went after, because this is basically where Picard kind of explains to that character that we don't really have money anymore. We really don't have that anymore. We've gotten rid of poverty. We've gotten rid of all this stuff, and of course, I think in Deep Space Nine, they played around with that and said, how exactly does that work? But this is the first show where they really say that, where Picard is confronting this character who was very rich in his era. We assume like in the around our time. And he's basically telling him that's not how things work anymore. And all that stuff is gone. And then we have the other character who's a sort of like honky-tonk Southern entertainer. And he actually seems to be the coolest with everything. And he actually has kind of like a nice little friendship with Data that I like. Him and Data start talking and doing stuff. And Data and him decide to throw a party. There's a line that I like when he's doing that. I remember commenting on it with my dad when I first watched this episode, where the three people, obviously, they're from a different time. They don't know what's going on. They don't know what Romulans are. They kind of have been thrown in this situation and don't really understand any of it. But there's this part where the one character is trying to do this party with Data to basically get everybody at ease, help them adjust to the new time period. And he says to Data, because Data has to leave, and talks about something about the Romulans. And he says to Data, so these Romulans, we're not going to be inviting them to our party, are we? And Data says, no, that would be inappropriate. And I always liked that because I felt like that was a good way for that character to realize sort of the gravity of the situation and kind of get some insight without getting something directly. Was that he said, we're not going to invite these guys to our party, are we? He's like, no, we're not. So as the episode progresses, they do go into the neutral zone. And at first, the Romulans appear to be kind of probing them, much like they did in Balance of Terror. They actually kind of decloak for a second, almost to provoke the Enterprise, because Worf is like, and even Riker is like, dude, red alert, get the shields up, but fire. You know what I mean? Because we're only going to have a second before they're able to fire. Riker explains, we only have that brief minute while they're rematerializing to hit them before they can hit us. And of course, Picard shows his character, being the diplomat that he is. He restrains Worf and Riker and says, no, just let it go. And of course, then the ship just disappears at first. So now it's like, okay, Picard, you screwed up, because now they know you guys don't have the resolve. They're going to blow you out of the water. So it's very tense. In the middle of all this, the financial guy, the banker guy, he actually makes his way up to the bridge because he feels like, he wants answers, and that's kind of the person he is. He wants to know what's going on. He makes his way to the bridge. And then the Romulans appear again, just as they're trying to get him off of the bridge and saying, what the hell is he doing here? The Romulans appear. And another kind of interesting parallel with Balance of Terror is we have a very sort of esteemed Star Trek alum make his first appearance in this episode. And that is the actor who plays Gul Dukat. So he is actually one of the Romulan commanders. This is his first appearance in anything Star Trek. And so we have the two commanders, as we can see in the picture that we have up. The one on the left, if you're facing the screen, that is the actor who played Gul Dukat, Mark. I always mess up his last name. Alamio.
Alarma? Is it Mark Alarmo? I can't believe I couldn't do it. I could hear it in my head until you were like saying you weren't sure how to say it. Mark Alamo? Mark Alamo? Oh my goodness.
This is the actor who played Gul Dukat in Deep Space Nine, and also was the first Cardassian that we ever see in a later episode of TNG, although that wasn't Dukat. That was a different character. So he's one of the Romulan commanders. And what we have is that basically the Romulans explain that, earlier in the episode, I should have mentioned, they find that one of the outposts is gone. Not destroyed, it's gone. It's not there anymore. It's just been, the way Worf describes it, it's as if it was just pulled out of the planet, you know? And so when they meet with the Romulans say, listen, the same thing's been happening to us. And it's kind of funny because there's a sort of this tense moment. It's actually broken by the financial guy, the banker guy, because he says, hey, these guys don't know what's going on. They're hoping you do, you know? Right. And and Picard says, yeah, he's right. They don't have any better clue of what's going on than we do. So what happens is that basically they decide that they're going to do some sort of a joint investigation to figure out what's going on. And we don't find out until later that what this all is this is a lead up to the introduction of the Borg. Originally, the Borg were supposed to appear in this episode, but because of the writer's strike, that's why they're not in it. So the Borg were actually supposed to be introduced, live, full-bodied in this episode. In fact, it was originally intended to be a two-parter. So we would have had the reintroduction of the Romulans and the introduction of the Borg in the same story. But apparently that didn't happen because of the writer's strike. And then most TNG fans know about the appearance of the Borg and Q-Who, little tongue twister for me. Later on in the second season of Star Trek is when we actually see the Borg in the flesh. And they make a passing reference to the fact when they do encounter the Borg, they find planets that have the same effect that this Federation outpost had in terms of it was just basically carved out of the planet and removed, Right. So there was a lot going on in the neutral zone. And again, it's kind of interesting because, the Romulan part of it is very much sort of the B story. And the A story doesn't really have anything to do with the Romulans. But we do learn a lot about the Romulans in terms of the fact that they've been gone for a long time. They make a reference to that they were dealing with other things, like other more important things. I remember a big speculation of fans at the time was that maybe they were actually expanding their other borders on the other side, beyond the Federation, Klingon Empire. So basically the other direction that they were involved with wars, taking over other planets on that side, where we're possibly dealing with another foe, on that part of space. But we do realize that from this episode that the Borg apparently have been in the neutral zone area, and they have been removing colonies or outposts on both sides. And so, like I said, we get an introduction not only to the Romulans of the TNG era, and this is the first time we get to see their new ship. I remember that was a big moment as a fan when you saw the new design of the Romulan bird of prey. And the musical cues were really good in this episode as well for the Romulans. They did a good job with that. And we continue those musical cues much later throughout Star Trek. So a very interesting episode. It does have a lot of callbacks in a lot of ways to Balance of Terror in terms of the ways that the Federation has not had contact with the Romulans for a long time. Once again, they're mysterious. The Federation doesn't know a whole lot about them or what they've been doing the last 50 years. And then we have the introduction of the Borg. So I think this stuff is going to be very relevant for Star Trek Picard.
And you mentioned it as a curiosity. I do find it really interesting. I think it's Mark Alamo that he is in this episode. It's his first Star Trek episode, and he's playing a Romulan commander. And if we look at Balance of Terror back in '66, we have Mark Leonard playing a Romulan commander. Later on, Mark Leonard obviously would play Spock's father, Sarek, and Sarek would carry forward specifically with Mark Leonard, not just through the shows, but into Next Gen, into the movies, and then a version of his character still continues on through Discovery. So, Mark Leonard's footprint on that character is huge. And then you look at Mark Alamo and with Gul Dukat and the huge footprint that character leaves too. It's very interesting. They come on, they're just playing the alien of the week, and then it turns into like a kind of, in my mind anyway, a defining role, as far as being a genre, actor. I also wanted to call out too the other sub-commander who is actually on the other side of him. He actually is a bit of a character actor. He doesn't have quite the Star Trek pedigree that Mark Leonard or obviously Mark Alamo will eventually have after this episode. But that's actually Anthony James. He played Varric, which is a role I don't think I'll ever forget, actually, from Buck Rogers in the 25th Century. It was a two-parter called, I think it was A Plot to Kill a City, Part 1 and Part 2. And his character played a very important and pivotal role. Started out as a villain and sort of changed allegiances through the course of the 2 episodes. And he also played one of my favorite leg breakers. He's actually one of the people that killed Officer Lyman Good in Blue Thunder, one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah, I remember that Buck Rogers episode. That's a pretty good episode. And his character is very tragic, as I recall.
Yeah, very tragic.
His planet had been destroyed in some huge nuclear type devastation or something like that. So all the people of his race were like I think disfigured and all that. So yeah, I remember that episode very well, and I think he was in a lot of things. I mean, he's been in a lot.
Great character actor.
So
they always manage to get really great actors to play Romulans. It's like clockwork. It's interesting. They always manage to cast just the right kind of person to keep that mystery and that mystique moving forward. You can tell out of the 2 here, even by the way they're sitting, you can tell that one is the strategist, or the sort of more the KGB, operative kind of guy that he might be Tal Shiar, even spying on the other sub-commander or something. And then the other guy, he's very clearly the leg breaker. He's the guy that is ready to just go to war right now. He doesn't even care. He's ready to put the Federation in their place. You could just tell. That's the thing that's great about character actors. I mean, everything about what they do informs their performance. Even just the simple way that they're look at Jonathan Frakes, arms crossed, defensive, on guard, not trusting of what's happening.
And Picard, they shouldn't be.
And then Picard, open to whatever's going to happen. He's not afraid. He's open. We'll deal with it. Relax. We got this. Although I'm not sure he's got that in that Countdown comic, but that's another story for obviously after the show debuts. We'll see how that ends. So,
very true. So, what do you think are some of the biggest takeaways from these 2 episodes as far as what we're going to see in Star Trek Picard?
Well, for me, out of Balance and Terror, it's the portrayal of the Romulans, one. The fact that they are very much in the business of empire building. And even when they don't, a seasoned officer doesn't agree with what's happening, he's not willing to jump ship. He's going to hold steadfast on what his convictions and what he's pledged to do. He's honor and duty bound to do what he said he's going to do. So it says something very strong about the Romulan people. And then you turn around and you get to this episode, we see they're very much in the same place, but they're a little bit more calculating maybe than we might have thought. They're a little bit maybe more strategic than we would have thought. Mark Leonard's character in Balance of Terror, he's calculating, but not in the same way. These guys are playing chess. They're playing chess. That's a whole different kind of warfare. They're very much strategists. But beyond that, too, the big takeaway here is that it could even be when they say that they were dealing with other matters, their interaction with the Borg could go back even further than we're aware of. And that might be something interesting to see in Picard, is that the Borg were active, during Next Gen in Romulan space. And
obviously with the neutral zone, we know that. With the neutral zone, we know they were active in Romulan space. So,
But I'm just saying, I'm curious to see what it is that the Romulans know and have learned about the Borg that maybe only possibly Picard knows because he was a Borg. Maybe it's something that he doesn't want other people to know, something that he's kept secret that the Romulans do know, because the Romulans are very much about their secrets. So
Absolutely, yeah.
That's my big takeaway from this particular episode is the connection to the Borg that goes so far back that it's a little bit shocking and when you think about it. So
Yeah.
Picard, the show Picard, especially when you look at the Romulans, I mean, obviously with Picard, they have a lot of material they can pull from. But it's interesting to see how much they have that they could do in terms of the Romulan connection to the Borg and what the Romulans are intending to do with the Borg. I think there's a lot there. There's a lot there. So that's my takeaway from Neutral Zone.
As far as Balance of Terror goes, we've discussed this in a previous episode, but what do you think about reintroducing that classic design, which we really haven't seen? I know we see it, I think, in one of the remastered TOS episodes, but in the original airing of the original series, we never saw that design again because that model was destroyed. I don't know if you heard that story, but that model was destroyed. And that's why later on, when we see the Romulans, they are using the Klingon design. So that model was destroyed. So this is actually with Picard and with the trailer that we've previously commented on. This is the first time we're actually going to see that original Bird of Prey back, other than some of the remastered stuff where they did show it again. But yeah, what do you think of that?
I think it's interesting. It's an interesting callback. It's going to be curious to see if it's sort of a question of any ship, that's space worthy they need, because of what happened, because of the events that if you're not familiar, go watch the Kelvin timeline, the first J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie. That'll inform you right there. I'm curious to see. Or
you could even read the original Countdown miniseries comic book too.
That's true. Maybe do that instead. But it's interesting to see if it's a question of if it was space worthy, or if just it's a version of ship that they've constantly updated and they just keep in service because it's so reliable. So it'd be interesting to see. Or possibly, what I had been secretly hoping, which I know is probably not true, because I always have my theories. I had been really hoping that Picard and his crew were actually on board that ship because it has a cloaking device, and almost kind of like the Mandalorian ship. It's an older model ship, and because of that, it's easier to evade radar. Maybe it has some illegal tech that it shouldn't have anymore that they had left over from the original Earth Romulan War. I like that idea, but I'm pretty sure that's not the ship they're on. They're probably actually fighting it, which I think is unfortunate.
There is a scene where the ship they're on is fighting it, so
yeah,
I don't think that's going to be the case.
So
you never know. I mean, it could be a twist. But
I'd rather see them on the Romulan ship and then they rechristen it the Picard. But anyhow, that's just me waxing poetic on what I want to see. But no, I think it's fun to see the original, design back. But my speculation, like I said, is I'd love to see Picard and his crew eventually on it, and they call it the Picard, and that's their ship. That's not going to happen. Beyond that, I have a feeling it might just be it's a space-worthy ship. That's why it's still in service. And it might even be one of those things where, just like we're seeing in the Countdown comic, there's two factions, or even three factions. There could be disparate elements within the Romulan Empire. Reunification 1 and 2, you know what I mean? Spock was working with them. There could be colonies of Romulans that don't believe in what is being done, and they could be fighting against. So they could start out conflicting and then eventually become an ally. So kind of like what we're seeing in the Countdown comic with those two Tal Shiar agents who've decided to switch sides. And you never know. It may be a super advanced ship and just look like an old ship, and it's deceptive. I can't imagine the Romulans would do that, have an outdated ship design, and it comes up and it's like, wow, why is that old clunker still in space and it's armed to the teeth and has advanced weapons on it? I can't see the Romulans ever doing something like that.
Yeah, well, they had there's actually an episode of Deep Space Nine where they did that with Excelsior class ship. That's the one with the coup. I think it's actually called Paradise Lost or something like that, isn't it? The one where they have the coup. We lost the feed for a second. I think we're back. They had the coup on Earth, and the admiral, he had a ship intercept the Defiant, and it was an Excelsior class vessel, which, on the surface of it, you're like, why are they sending up like 100-year-old vessel against a Defiant? And as soon as they start fighting it, they realize it's been totally upgraded and can totally take on the Defiant. So there's a precedence for that. Just for people that will nitpick and say, "Oh, that's dumb," because I know there's already people that are kind of like, "Why do they have that old bird of prey in there?" Now, I've mentioned to you again, talking about Star Trek Online. In Star Trek Online, if you choose the Romulan faction to play as, first of all, you're not Romulan Empire, you're Romulan Republic. You mentioned that idea of other factions. Well, they have that in the game, and you start out with a bird of prey. That's the ship you start out with. That's the baseline ship you start out with. So, I think that there might be some homage to that, or some cross pollination going on, where maybe the writers of Star Trek Picard are getting some at least some inspiration from Star Trek Online.
Right.
It seems to me that's a callback to it, and anybody who's played the game will see that. So I don't know if that's deliberate, if that's what they're going for. But then the other thing is, like you were saying, I've mentioned this, I just think that it makes sense that the Romulans, now having had to leave their empire, they would just take any ship they could get. So any Romulan design you have ever seen or haven't seen or whatever, they're all over the place because they literally had to take every single ship they had,
Right.
Anything that was in mothball was made space worthy again, and they took it,
Right.
So that would make complete perfect sense to me. I do like that design a lot. I've always liked the Romulan bird of prey. I remember as a kid wondering why they went with the Klingon design, which I didn't dislike the Klingon design, but as a kid, I didn't know that the model was destroyed and they had to go with the Klingon chips, So because I liked it, I liked that design. In fact, I had one of those model kits that had the classic Enterprise, the classic Klingon D7, and the Romulan bird of prey on a little tripod. I had one of those model kits, and I loved the Romulan bird of prey. I used to take it off fly it around all the time, because I just thought it was a cool design. So I'm happy to see it back. I'll be interested to see if we see the TNG design back at all, though. Because that has been kind of a classic design in and of itself. This is the Neutral Zone was the first episode where we saw it, and I haven't seen anything to indicate that we will see that we will see the TNG era Romulan ship. So we'll see if they decide to do that or not.
Yeah. Well, curious. We'll see. We will see. Like I said, that's my what I would like to see. I said what that is. I know that's not happening. And then as far as what it's going to be, I'm okay to wait for the show. I mean, I have my speculation, but again, my speculation's obviously wrong. So,
well, it's still fun to speculate, even when we are wrong.
Big shock! My speculation's wrong. So.
It's still fun. Yeah. I still enjoy it. It's still good stuff. Yeah. And also, just to reiterate with the Neutral Zone, anybody wondering about a connection between the Romulans and the Borg? That's how it started. There was always a connection between the Romulans and the Borg. So for fans that want to complain about that, well, you're wrong.
Yeah, there you go. And this is another one of those episodes, if you want to watch, obviously you can watch it on Netflix. You can watch it on CBS All Access. There's lots of different places you can watch Star Trek The Next Generation. Obviously one of the greatest Star Trek shows ever produced. And this is going to be a very important episode leading up to Picard. It's definitely worth revisiting. Even if it's full of that tired old Southern Western stereotype that people keep dragging up. I don't know. I was trying to go for something there. I think it felt kind of flat. Being from the South, I wouldn't know anything about that. Is that good? Are we good here? Or?
I think so.
Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and let's wrap up this episode. So I want to thank you for hopefully watching or listening to this episode of the Retro Rogues Live. Again, I've been one of your hosts. My name is Dave Beatty. You can learn more about me, see some of my art, and all these various gestating projects that I swear I'm working on. I got sick. I'm tired. But they are being worked on, and they will be rolling out soon. But you can learn all about them over at my website. That's davebeatty.com. That's www.davebeaty.com. I want to thank my co-host, Eric Alexander, for bringing his obviously awesome and great perspective here to the show, as well as obviously correcting some of my Trek misremembers and helping to keep the show on course with his Trek knowledge, proving that I am not the Trekkie that some people seem to think I am.
Hey, we all have the different aspects that we focus on. You know me, I'm a big lore guy. I did want to, we got a late chat here. Mindhunger, he said, one of my favorite episodes. Said the scene is up there with Klingon warbirds armed and ready. So I believe he was talking about Balance of Terror, but I'm not sure. But obviously, we enjoyed both episodes, and yes, Klingon warbirds armed and ready. That is a great line. So, I am Eric Alexander, and I was your co-host today. You can find me on Twitter. I'm most active on Twitter, and you can see my name right there, BassGod14, BassGod14. I am streaming to you from my Twitter account as well as from my YouTube account, which is also BassGod14, and this was our first time that we did Twitch. So we're on Twitch under BassGod14 as well. And we are also on Facebook under the Retro Retrospective show that Dave does. So we're on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, whatever you enjoy, we're there.
And just so everyone who may be watching or listening knows, we do go live, unless otherwise specified, every Wednesday at 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock our time, which is Arizona time, which I think is Mountain time, which I could be wrong about, but...
No, Mountain Standard Time.
Well, there you go. Mountain Standard Time. See, there's Eric keeping me on track once again, even though I was about to go for a lame joke. Well, lame jokes are what I do best. But every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Again, like Eric said, you can find this on Twitter. You can find us now on Twitch. Obviously, the Facebook page and on YouTube. So again, I want to thank everyone for watching or listening to the show. Please join us next Wednesday as we continue to lead up to the debut of Picard on CBS All Access as we watch Eric slowly take the plunge into paying for yet another streaming service amidst the ongoing battles of the never-ending, it seems like, streaming wars. So I want to thank you for obviously watching this episode. Please come back, join us next Wednesday. And I wish I had a fun tagline to say until next time. See us then.